A fierce battle unfolds between two mechs, giant robots. The white mech, controlled by the main character, defeats the opponent. This young guy is struggling with this battle. He mentions that his fate has changed significantly recently. A single strike from the metal hand leaves the enemy no chance. The main character, Yuta, pilots the mech from the cockpit. Two girls support him and help him continue the fight. The majestic white weapon of the heroes towers over the wreckage that was just recently a robot controlled by a trained soldier. A young girl is amazed by the power of the device. Several school buses are traveling on the highway with middle school students. Yuta clenched his hands, resting on his lap. Anxiety and impatience gripped the young man as he awaited this day. The boy had been looking forward to this school trip for a long time. He decided that during this excursion, he would confess his feelings to the girl he had liked since first grade. Someone nudges the guy with an elbow. His neighbor points disapprovingly at his face, indicating his nervous state. She scolds him for being cowardly. The main character tries to make excuses, but she quickly sees through his deception. After all, as his childhood friend, she supports his plan without even understanding Yuta's feelings. Her reprimand about her friend's insecurity was understandable. Shirayuki Yui, the name of the guy's beloved, is one of the most famous girls in their school. Not just the school, but possibly the entire city. Yuta and her friend look towards Yui, who is modestly smiling during the conversation. The young man asks them to understand that this is his friend's only chance for recognition. The girl points out that she's actually helping her childhood friend confess for free. The guy admits she's right and tries to apologize, but bright flashes around the bus interrupt his monologue. At school, students start screaming in terror. The bus shakes, everything is shining, and fear clouds their eyes. Even the gentle and modest Yui clasps her hands in a prayerful gesture. A massive circle of spells, made up of various runes and inscriptions, passes through the bus. The school children scream in terror at the unknown. Someone in the crowd shouts out their teacher's name. Minami-sensei tries to calm the students and urges them to hold on tightly to the handrails and seats. The light around the bus blinds the driver, growing brighter and brighter. Suddenly, the heroes are greeted with a view of a beautiful medieval castle landscape. Statues of knights tower over the bus, as if surrounding it. The shaking suddenly stopped, and the others decided to go out and figure out what was happening to them. The main character starts thinking the same thing, but also begins to realize that this isn't Japan. A knock is heard at the bus door. The knights order everyone to immediately exit the bus. One by one, they all get off and then notice something to the side. A giant mechanical robot lifts a bus off the ground. The hero looks up, realizing that this is an enormous robot, a size unheard of by humanity today. Nagisa approaches from behind, gently grabbing the edge of Yuta's shirt. Yuta tries to reassure her, saying he doesn't sense any danger from them. But an unfamiliar voice interrupts them. The director of the call center, Balmore, apologizes to Earthlings for the spectacle, presenting guests with a different world. The students look skeptically at the man. Their homeroom teacher, Minami-sensei, tries to find out what happened to them and what the word Earthlings means in the context of that man. He, in turn, becomes more assertive and answers the teacher's question affirmatively. A plan to sell people at an auction in the coming days is also revealed. The Japanese hesitantly ask for clarification. Balmore decides to explain the structure of the world and the technology available to its inhabitants. Mechs have become an important part of their world. The world of Farba, where the students find themselves, allows only a few inhabitants to harness a special energy. Without it, becoming a pilot of mechanical weaponry is impossible. The teacher asks again about the pilots. The potential of ores is a special power that allows control over mechs. Our heroes were specifically chosen to be kidnapped and sold as slaves in this world. Minami-sensei is surprised by the selfishness of the leadership's decisions. Suddenly, the knight forcefully pins the teacher to the ground. The children are terrified, and the woman grits her teeth in pain. Balmore pretends to sympathize with them, but also notes that pilots hold a high status in this world. He thinks it's not a bad idea to become a pilot in a foreign world. As he prepares to leave, he mentions that they will be sold tomorrow regardless. The newcomers' last hope will be the ore index, while they can rest in the dungeon for now. In the vast castle, every corridor is patrolled by knights. Students cannot escape from the underground dungeon. The children split into groups, trying to come to terms with their situation and think about the future. A classmate approaches Yuta, questioning the true value of Rudy. The main character is surprised by Haranishi's quick adaptation. The latter simply hopes his level will be high enough. Not getting a clear answer from the young man, Haranishi asks Mikage, another classmate. He suggests that maybe the man from the assessment center is just fooling them. But if he's not lying, then Shirayuki-san will have the highest score. Indeed, Yui remains quite positive even in such a difficult situation. The hero realizes he has no evidence to prove Balmore's words are true, but he also believes that his beloved will have the highest score. The kids line up at the device. Various instruments have been specifically designed to measure the aptitude of future pilots. One of the students steps onto the counting platform. The device shows 12,000. Someone in the crowd of researchers exclaims that this is the first of the Highlanders, those who have surpassed the 10,000 units of rhodium potential. Scientists hope for pilots with a rhodium level above 20,000. Yuta listens to the stranger's words. He realizes that 10,000 is a high level, and his classmate Iwatani was the captain of the soccer team. This information fuels theories. Then the young man understands that a double Highlander should reach a level above 20,000 units of rhodium potential. However, judging by the scientists' reactions, this is an extremely rare occurrence among the summoned. 29,000 is another student's score. A man in the crowd of managers is amazed at how close the young man is to achieving triple Highlander status. As they talk, the scientists realize they already have 2 Highlanders. There could be more, which means a big catch for the group of recruits. Haranishi goes next but is quickly disappointed by the number, seeing it's below average. Many students go through this process. Finally, Shirayuki Yui passes through the scanner. The device shows a reading of 36,000 rupees. That's a triple Highlander. The main character never doubted this girl. The crowd applauds the student. Yuta reflects on how rare pilots with such skills are in this world. At the same time, the main character starts contemplating his own fate. Now it's Nagisa's turn, the childhood friend of the main character. A monotonous voice announces the number 6,500, stating that the girl is a half Highlander. Yuta recalls that only 5 people have ever surpassed the 5,000 unit mark. This means Nagisa could become an exceptional mecha pilot in the future. Shifting, the girl smiles and flashes a peace sign. Yuta returns the gesture. Finally, it was the main character's turn. In a world where numbers on a panel determine your fate, he decides to try his luck and see if he is worthy of greatness by the standards of an unfamiliar realm. The needle suddenly swings to a critical level. The scientist's face contorts in shock and disbelief, stammering simultaneously. Gathering his strength, he manages to say the number 2. Yuta and everyone else in the room look at the man in confusion. Echoing the scientist, they gaze at the researcher with astonishment and bewilderment. Afterward, one of the lead scientists also checks the protagonist's results. In the same amazement, he exclaims that the device is working correctly, which means the result is accurate. Yuta's rhodium potential index is 2. Amidst the sound of applause and cheers, the host suddenly announces the start of the auction. The items up for bid are summoned students from planet Earth. The first lot is the captain of the Iwatani football team. The crowd is informed of his level, and his status as a Highlander is announced. The stakes skyrocket from 10 million to 160 million, offered by the Valkyria Empire. Meanwhile, the main character is amazed by the entire atmosphere and the auction itself. A new reality has arrived where 2nd and 3rd grade students will be sold and separated due to the ambitions of strangers from another planet. As the auction continues, selling one of the lots to the Kingdom of Rubel for 1.2 billion gold, Yuta realizes they might never meet again. The loud bang of the gavel draws the attention of the entire room. The host announces the start of bidding for the auction's main item, a triple Highlander, a girl named Shirayuki Yui. The auction has begun. The bidding for the girl is skyrocketing, but the sum of 12 billion quiets the room. The signs slowly lower, unable to compete with such a major player. A man in military uniform holds card number 003. The host gives one last chance, but ultimately hands over the valuable lot to a representative of the Irish Empire for an astronomical amount of gold. People can only sigh in frustration as they watch the Irish Empire. They are the strongest and wealthiest empire thanks to the Highlanders and the mines on their land. The auction continues with a new bid for Nagisa, a half Highlander. The girl stands on stage, slightly tense and hesitant. Yuta is worried about her friend. Her value increases every second. In a moment, she's sold for 20 million. All she can do is slowly wave goodbye to her friend. anticipating their imminent separation. The main character is overwhelmed by a wave of mixed emotions. All he wanted was to confess his feelings to the girl from the parallel class. This fate is not what he desired. Suddenly, the loud voice of the host cuts through the crowd. He announces a strange lot, saying it will be a sad example at their auction. Normally, such an item wouldn't be displayed, but rules are rules. Completely useless and insignificant. Utah from Earth with a rudium potential of 2. At first, the audience was surprised, thinking it was impossible. But then laughter filled the room, growing louder and louder. The mocking laughter and scornful jeers grew louder by the moment. Only Yuta stood on stage, enduring such humiliation. His face showed deep hurt and shame. The main girls in his school life could only look at him helplessly. Without waiting for a bid, the host announces that even 1 gold coin is enough for such a useless creature. Someone slammed the table, making a statement. The man suddenly jumps up and agrees to the deal. However, he refuses to offer even a single gold coin, proposing only 2 small nuts instead. Yuta feels like an animal headed for slaughter, trapped in a cage. Now his new owner is taking him to a life of servitude. As he moves further away from the auction, the young man's life changes dramatically, but he knows this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. A girl stops in front of the carriage. It's Nagisa. She turns to watch the rickety iron cart, carrying her friend further away from her and their old life. All she can do is look on regretfully and softly say his name. After a long journey, the cart carrying the main character arrives at a field with a small house. It's already dark outside, and only the stars light the path the young man must take. Grabbing the boy by the scruff, the new owner of Utah threw him into an outbuilding by the house that looked like a shed. This was now his new home. The guy turns around, taking in the room. He wasn't prepared for the oppressive feeling from the facade and interior of his new prison. In hope, the hero asks about food. The man sarcastically replies that he has enough for today. Without waiting for the new slave's reaction, he slams the door and leaves, closing off the last chance for rescue. The young man leaned against the wall, sighing sadly. At that moment, a small, slender girl approached him. She called out to him abruptly and familiarly, using "you." The girl asks the hero if he's hungry. Her sad gaze peers through her unkempt but thick hair. The guy sees the little girl in a new light, noticing how fragile and vulnerable she is. Looking at her appearance, Yuta realizes where he is, a place for those who haven't found themselves, or were never given a chance to succeed in this world. Yes, in this new world, there is room for slavery and oppression based on the potential of Rudia. His friend, Nagisa, his beloved, Shirayuki-san. What will happen to them now? Especially to him. At the palace gates, a pair of guard knights decide to chat about the latest news. They talk about an incident at the auction involving a pilot whose score was 2. One of the knights thoughtfully mentions that he saw the hand go around the dial before pointing to 2. But he dismisses the thought. His partner agrees. There is no reading above 100,000. The device for measuring Rudy potential can't assess results beyond this point. Moreover, the guy's skill level is so low that he has no chance of activating the mech. In one of the warehouses, there's a huge white mechanical robot waiting for its operator. After some time, the frail girl, Nanami, approaches the main character again, offering him a small bag of food in her slender hand. Yuta asks her why she's giving away the food she carefully saved for a rainy day, when the owner might simply forget about them. Giving it to a newcomer is noble but foolish. However, Nanami insists that she knows what it's like to experience sudden hunger, when hunger becomes the worst torment. Yuta tries to say that her kindness nourishes him, but the girl immediately cuts off the flattery and asks him not to be foolish. They might only get fed once every 3 to 4 days. The boy's face freezes with complex emotions. Such a little girl in such a harsh place, they find a compromise by sharing the food equally. The little girl clearly didn't expect this from him. Yuta just smiled and said that food tastes better when shared. Tossing and turning in the middle of the night, Yuta couldn't fall asleep. It was cold, hard, and unbearably hungry. Then Nanami, noticing his discomfort, snuggled closer to warm him. The guy wondered again. How did a girl like Nanami end up in this place? The sun is just rising to the sound of cicadas and other insects. The new owner of Utah is already at the door. He forcefully kicks it open and wakes his slaves. The hero didn't get enough sleep. He's exhausted. At this moment, he realizes what it means to be a slave. His eyes fall on Nanami. She doesn't resist or dream of freedom. She has simply accepted her fate as a sentence. Yuta doesn't believe she can survive in these conditions for the rest of her life. He wants to change everything, even if he doesn't have the strength right now. The owner throws them some food. The portion is tiny, but the girl is still happy that they were remembered at all. Yuta glances curiously at Nanami and finally decides to ask how she ended up here. As she cleans the food, the girl trembles, remembering how her mother sold her for the sake of her other children. The main character realizes his mistake, but Nani gently smiles, explaining that her mother was promised money, an amount equal to 5 months' salary. This money will help her brothers and sisters. Her words and smile somewhat calm Yuta. But not for long, because at night, everything changes. The girl trembles from tears and pain. Yuta quickly realizes he has touched a serious wound. Something wakes the main character at night. Nanami is crying. She can't be consoled. Yuta apologizes, even though she insists it's not her fault. Through tears of hysteria, she says she's happy her loved ones no longer have to go hungry. He realizes how foolish she was to think she had moved past her mother's betrayal. Something like that always leaves a mark. That evening, Nanami just cried. Her tears slowly trickled down and dried on Yuta's t-shirt. This event brought them closer. Nanami became a bit brighter, less afraid. She even started calling Yuta in a special way. One day, she found a doll near the mansion. The toy immediately became beloved by the little girl, who had nothing since birth. On one of those calm days, the sound of a fight jolted Yuta awake. He jumped up and rushed to the scene of the conflict, unfolding before him. The owner loudly scolded the girl, accusing her of theft. The young man tried to lie, claiming the doll was found outside the estate. But the man kept beating the child, despite Yuta's attempts to protect her. One of the blows landed right on the guy's face. Only then, seeing his condition, does the attacker step back, cursing loudly. Nanami runs up to Yuta, asking if he's okay. She's scared, but Yuta tries to calm the little one. He apologizes for his helplessness, but the girl insists it's not his fault. To her, he is the most important person in her life. Season after season passes. Time is relentless. One evening, the owner slams the door, declaring that he no longer has work or food. Nanami is confused but looks up, her eyes fixed on Yuta. He notices it too. The door wasn't locked. However, the old man, who had long lived under the master's oppression, speaks of the door's tricky nature. It only opens at a specific angle and time. He advises against tempting fate to avoid regret. It's better to go with the flow, but Yuta finally understands. The reason people live the way they do now isn't because of a locked door. As soon as he pushes it, it gives way. The moonlight illuminates the faces of the freed slaves. The happiness and relief that freedom brings are palpable, even in the quiet of the night. Yuta tells Nanami about his escape plan and invites her to join him. The girl agrees without hesitation. Finally, the old man decides to ask the name of his rescuer. Just one question. What is his level? Yuta quietly replies, 2. This number turned his whole life upside down. Nanami and Yuta run away together and find themselves in a bustling port city. As they look for work, they already imagine filling their bellies with food. Nanami beams with happiness, but his proficiency level became a barrier for many job openings. Sometimes, he wasn't even considered as a candidate, dismissed as soon as they saw the number 2. As they approach the ship, they find a man willing to offer them work, though it is extremely difficult. The main character's task was to reach the destination as quickly as possible. The sleeping area turned out to be a room without beds or mattresses. A group of men looked at him questioningly. When they approached the local leader, they learned that the higher the rhodium potential, the faster the ship sailed. Such a low level meant that Yuta would have to put in twice the effort. As it turns out later, leaving the hold, eating, and sleeping will be prohibited. So it was in Nanami and Yuta's best interest to get there quickly. The departure was announced suddenly. Everyone jumped up and got to work. The workers, strong hands, toughened by physical labor, gripped the mechanism's handles, making the boat speed up. They all worked like a well-oiled machine, slowly launching the ship. Yuta started doubting himself, but after pulling himself together, he decided to do his best. With just a gentle push, the mechanism moved forward, increasing the motor's speed. Like a whirlwind, the engine created a wild rush of speed and adrenaline. The crew did not expect such a turn of events. However, pulling themselves together, the captain gave the first order after the tragedy on board. The sails were not raised, but the boat was manageable, so everything went just fine. The merchant was very pleased and impressed with the workers. efforts, even paying them money. After receiving the money, the main character wonders why they don't run away since they have nothing to lose. However, the local leader disagrees, saying, "If we lose, I'm off to the sauna." In the end, the young man asks the girl if she wants to stay in this town. She calmly agrees, as long as it's closer to Utah. Nanami is willing to do anything to spend another day without stress or worries, just playing with Yuta. A vast estate, a carriage with white horses. The landscape is filled with wealth and prosperity. A beautiful aristocrat twirls in her light dress around Nagisa. She wants to get to know her better. A high school student feels uncomfortable at first around the other girls. The elegant lady in the long silk dress was the second princess of the kingdom of Amria, Linnell. Nagisa responds barely audibly. Seeing the girl's nervousness, Linnell was very friendly with her, even trying to joke. But everything was difficult. The princess thought Nagisa was afraid of being treated poorly or unfairly. But something else was bothering the girl. She misspoke, and the other, seizing on this phrase, tried to find out how her best friend Yuta was doing. Nagisa admits she genuinely cares about him, opening her heart to Princess Linnell. She tries to find out where he is now. Pouring out her heart, the girl admits what she feared to acknowledge and had been avoiding. She had feelings for Yuta ever since they met years ago. The princess doesn't hesitate to hug Nagisa, pulling the half-Highlander closer. Whispering words of comfort, she vows to find that guy no matter what. The future pilot looks at the girl in disbelief, but her smile alone was enough to fill his heart with hope. King Majuni of Amria took an interest in the troubles of the girl who had become friends with his second daughter during their time together. Linnell encourages her father to be more understanding and open towards Nagisa, the new half-Highlander who fits the job requirements. However, their sister's voice distracts them from their tasks. This was Himari, the third princess of Amria and the most energetic and spirited of her father's daughters. Linnell jokes with Himari but also learns about the location of Yukihu. Heading to the eldest sister, Linnell decides to show Nagisa her arsenal of weapons and the mech that will become her future body. A giant robot stood blocking the way, but then a voice came from its cabin, and a girl emerged. She slipped off the road and fell right into the mud. Yukiha, as the first princess of her country, is learning all the ways to maintain neutrality and peace in her nation. The time has come, a personal mech for Nagisa-san. It requires 5,000 units of rudi per day to operate. The maximum level is 12,000. It turned out that with these features, it was the most powerful mech in the country, and Nagisa is set to become its pilot. But even after hearing the girls' enthusiastic speech, Nagisa couldn't shake her feeling of sadness. Would she have to kill and fight in wars? But for what? The princesses, caught off guard by the question, fell silent in embarrassment. However, Yukika mentioned that other countries are rapidly increasing their power. To protect itself and maintain its neutrality, Amria needs to unite. Wandering through the city markets, Yuta and Nanami were looking for clothes, especially after being confined for so long. Nanami's eyes darted from one stall to another. Finally, the guy asked what she really wanted, and she was open to anything. After all, it was her first time picking out clothes. After spending some time in a clothing store and getting familiar with the local currency, they decided to book a room with a bath at one of the city's establishments. Gold, silver, copper, these have all become important in their lives now. Understanding how to estimate costs, the new clothes and money uplifted them, even if they didn't realize it themselves. Nanami's first time in the bath had to be special. He needed to teach her how to use all the products again. But it was worth it. Renting a room with a bath for 2 gold coins, Yuta realized for the first time that this was his first bed since being summoned to this world. Taking on important household duties, the young man warmed up the bath and reminded the child to undress before getting in the water. After taking off her clothes, Nanami felt the steam of hot water and the lather of soap on her skin for the first time. Clothes are scattered haphazardly on the floor, and the main character decides to help wash the girl's hair. Joyful, she can't control her body, splashing water around and giggling happily. In her childlike way, she tilted her head back toward the boy, and only then did Yuta realize that the little girl's body was quite mature for her age. He realized, without fully understanding, that Nanami's body had developed faster, and she was older than she appeared due to years of captivity and slavery without proper nutrition. Just to be sure, he decided to ask her age, and guessed it exactly right. She was only 14 years old. But her response scared the boy. In his homeland, Japan, this was considered a terrible crime. In quiet horror at the situation, Yuta suggests that Nanami take a bath herself. However, she cannot comprehend Yuta's Japanese way of thinking. In the end, Nanami refused to leave and stayed in the bathroom with the young man, wiping his back. However, Yuta managed to handle the awkward situation. Whispering softly and helping the main character wash up, Nanami suggests staying together until the very end. Letting go of his worries, Yuta agrees that they will be together until the end. The next day, Yuta reflects on how he has become a true older brother in Nanami's eyes. Now, he proudly considers himself Nanami's only family. In her new outfit and with freshly washed hair, she seems like a different person. Seeking compliments, Nanami asks if her new dress suits her. After receiving a positive response from the main character, they set off together toward the future. The first step is to improve their quality of life so they can become a family without any regrets. Unfortunately, the heroes will have to wait for their happy future. Finding a decent job with a level 2 Rudia turned out to be harder than Yuta expected. But Nanami was with him and ready to support him during this difficult time, so Yuta still felt strong enough to keep trying. Their daydreaming was interrupted by the sudden arrival of a stranger with a job offer. An elderly, well-dressed man offered a job for 50 gold coins a month. Yuta gasped in surprise. 50 gold coins was an enormous amount, far beyond what he and Nanami could afford. Remembering past experiences, he knew this was an astronomical price. Still, he decided to ask what kind of work they would have to do under his supervision. It turned out to be simpler than the main character thought. All he needed to do was talk to the man's daughter. That's it. The offer was too tempting, so Yuta was skeptical. However, he agreed to try for Nanami's future. The man introduced himself as Belfast and said he was confident they would succeed. And that's how this strange meeting happened. Yuta and her stepsister entered the room of Belfast's daughter. They didn't expect to find not just a girl on the bed, but a half-blood. Without even looking at the heroes, Belfast knew they were surprised. He told them about the curse placed on his daughter by an enemy with evil intent. Now he can't even share this pain with her due to his fear of interacting with people. Yuta took a step toward her bed. She just glanced at them from under her brow. But the heroes didn't hesitate and simply introduced themselves by name, showing their sincerity. The girl was confused, but she still took the outstretched hand. Falma is the name of Belfast's charming daughter. A young man offered to be her first friend, if she didn't mind. Born into this situation and trapped in her room by her fears and anxieties, it was the first time she spoke to strangers. She was cautious. After all, it was new to her. Nanami yanked Falma, and she jumped off the bed, flying toward the girl who was eager to play. Falma stopped and shouted, surprised that Nanami wasn't afraid of her in this form. But Nanami didn't even think about it. It was something new for her. Falma laughed out loud at those words. The girls made each other happier than anyone else in the world. Belfast admits to Yuta that they were not the first to visit Falmu, but before them, children ran away from him in fear, calling him a monster. He was happy to have met such close siblings. As the estate owner, he provided the heroes with every comfort. Since then, they no longer had to worry about survival. They often played with Falma, becoming almost like family. Nanami and Falma were so similar, especially in their energy. While playing tag with the girls, Yuta realizes he has lost sight of them. But when he decides to peek around the alley, he sees a white fur. Falma found the guy before he did, and together they decided to examine the mech bought by Belfast. It was just a collectible, as it broke when a triple Highlander sat in it. Yuta wonders why fur is dug up. Aren't they made by people? The mech core cannot be recreated with current technology, so they have to be dug up from underground. Falma clarified that everything except the core can be restored. She is an expert in the field of mechs. She finds mechs fascinating, and the mystery of their cores draws her closer to research. Yuta explained that his Rudy level was too low to try, but they were lucky that Falma had a Rudy potential of 7,800. At that moment, Nanami came running. Looking at her, Falma was curious about her level, but Yuta immediately said it was less than 100 since she hadn't opened the door in confinement. It turned out she didn't even try. This meant there was a high chance the girl had elevated levels of Rudy. Over time, they were able to test Nanami's rhodium potential. Mr. Belfast provided all the necessary conditions and asked them to maintain confidentiality. But who could have expected that Nanami would turn out to be a triple Highlander? Belfast offered her the chance to become a pilot for the royal family, but she wanted to be a child for just one more day. Happy for his new family, Belfast acknowledges that his daughter now has a new family and friends. Meanwhile, Shirayuki Yui is frightened by the outcome of all the events. She and her friends are separated because of a strange auction. But her thoughts always return to him, Yuta-kun. Yui-sama gazes at the majestic yet shrouded castle. Her guide points the way toward the imperial palace. Two groups of soldiers lined up to welcome the newly arrived Triple Highlander, Shirayuki Yui, from planet Earth. As the carriage approaches the main gates, the heroine receives a sharp remark about her lack of confidence. She remains silent, not attempting to defend herself. She reflects on how she lacks the dignity and grandeur to warrant such treatment. As she approaches the throne, the young woman sees a middle-aged man lounging on it. This was Emperor Erishi. He remarks on her pleasant appearance, saying she doesn't quite look like a high-ranking Highlander. But he finds that appealing. Shirayuki is told that in the presence of the emperor, one must kneel. But he dismisses the tradition, reminding them that Yui is the fifth Triple Highlander. All that matters is that she swears loyalty and becomes one of the Empire's faithful subjects. A young woman gazes in amazement at the halls filled with furs. Despite their majestic appearance, they are just primitive models for untalented soldiers. The soldier, slightly hurrying the girl along, shows Shirayuki the mech she is going to pilot. The name of the magical machine is Elval. It requires 30,000 units of rudium to activate. Its high-level armor and power make the mech unbeatable. Suddenly, an unfamiliar male voice echoes the scientist, speaking about the monstrous power and capabilities of this new mech. The voice belongs to Yuto. He is a celebrated pilot of the Erisha Empire. Yuto tells us that he is also Japanese and was sold 5 years ago. Now this new acquaintance offers Yui help in the future, as his student and newcomer in this environment. It turned out that Yuto-sama is a 5-time Highlander, unique and unparalleled. In fact, he is the strongest, having reached a Rudia level of 57,000 units. After saying goodbye to us, he approaches the scientists and engineers, who were responsible for the maintenance of Ajuma. The heroine's companion calls Yuto great, saying that sometimes his word carries more weight than the emperor's. It's no wonder, as this pilot made the Erish Empire the strongest. We can only try to get closer to him in the future. But suddenly, as they start discussing Yui-sama's upcoming training and missions, they get distracted by Shirayuki's request. She reminds her companion about the guy who was sold for a nut. He smirks, mocking the defective one, but the girl tries to defend him. Shirayuki Yui just wanted to know how that young man was doing. But from her mentor, she hears that he will order his release. A happy smile blooms on the girl's face, because she was able to help her beloved. She regrets not sharing her feelings earlier. Like Yuta, she tried to gather the courage to confess during the school trip, but fate played a cruel trick on them. The atmosphere in the Belfast house is grim. It turns out the government has learned about Nanami and her Rudia level. Now they might demand her surrender to serve the Empire and fight in the war. The estate owner now plans to hold off the attackers while her daughter and the family's new friends escape from the mansion. At the door, a deep bass voice can already be heard demanding the surrender of the Triple Highlander. The pounding and shouts of the guards grow louder. Yuta tries to persuade Nanami to make a quick escape, but they don't have enough time. Falma catches them in a difficult decision that could harm their friendship. The military realizes they won't get a response and starts considering countermeasures. Meanwhile, Belfast bids farewell to the heroes and thanks them for the happiness they brought to his home, even if it was brief. But suddenly, the knife pierces through the heavy door, right where the Count was standing. Belfast collapses from pain and blood loss. All the heroes are in shock, especially Falma. Her father was wounded by unknown assailants right before her eyes. The girl's father asks for her forgiveness one last time as he dies in her arms. All he can do is watch as his daughter cries and screams hysterically. Falma keeps praying for her father's survival. However, he only asks Yuta to take his daughter far away. He doesn't want her to face the same fate, loneliness, and detachment. After a moment of silence, Yuta agrees to help rescue Falma and Nanami from the government and Highlander hunters. In the end, the Count says that the time spent with Falma was the best. He wonders if he was able to make her even a little happier. He only wishes for her to have a normal childhood, like everyone else. Falma sincerely replies that she has been happy with her father since the day she was born. He just nods, shedding a single tear as he says goodbye to his daughter. Belfast takes his last breath on the lap of his beloved little girl. Without giving the heroes a moment to grieve, the soldiers try to break through the main gate. Yuta grabs the girls by the hands, realizing that if they stay here, they won't survive. Warriors and mechs have surrounded the Count's estate. In fear, Nanami clutches the main character's clothing, pressing closer. Together, the three of them try to bypass the enemy's massive army. In the end, Falma points to the mech they found earlier. The robot's armor was intact, but outdated, making it the perfect shelter. Feeling awe in front of the massive machine, the main character hesitates and doubts if it's possible. But the older girl points to a manual hatch on the chest, while the other points to the ladder for their plan. Realizing the difference between the mech and himself, the hero understands how vast it is, just like the responsibility placed on him. After setting up the ladder and opening the hatch, the hero sees a small pilot's cabin. Yuta is inside a mech for the first time. Given his low rank, he never even dreamed of such an opportunity. Barely fitting inside, they tried to start the mech. But Yuta hears heavy footsteps approaching. A mech, piloted by one of the enemy pilots, enters the room with our heroes. Falma immediately recognizes it as a Reldon model robot. Another pilot enters the storage room. The first one swears he saw the kids here. Realizing the children aren't there, they turn their attention to the battered car. The attempt to hide fails, and they prepare to attack the mech. Unafraid of harming the triple Highlander, the enemies grab spears to destroy this ancient machine. In a panic, Yuta pulls one of the levers, and the machine awakens, ready for battle. Everything lights up as electricity flows through the wires of the massive machine. Despite being built years ago, it can still compete with other machines. Suddenly, Falma shouts a warning to be careful. The enemy mech strikes with a steel spear it found. The pilots of other mechs are shocked. They didn't expect movement from such an old unit. The older girl takes on the task of training the boy, who will have to learn complex techniques on the fly. The enemies have recovered and are joining forces to defeat the heroes. The young man points out the lack of any weapons for resistance. Falma tries to find a way out of the situation. Suddenly, the girl calmly says that weapons aren't really necessary for victory. She suggests that Yuta fight them hand-to-hand. Suddenly, at incredible speed, the antique mech starts moving. With its fist, it punches through the armor of another robot. The team is amazed by the machine's power. It even surpasses the Zofus of the Reldon Empire, which is a huge shock for them. Nanami supports the main character. With her genuine charm, she echoes the elders, also speaking about the power of the mecha. Ready for battle, Yuta decides to break through the opponents and escape. The battle unfolds right in front of the Count's estate. After smashing the second mech to pieces, the hero claims his first victory. Seeing what was left of the enemy mech, Falma was amazed at how such an old machine could hold so much power. However, Yuta was more concerned about their safety. Trying to carefully distance themselves from enemies, Yuta and the girls encounter other Zofus. 3 against 1 is a tough battle. But if Yuta wants to survive, he must defeat all 3 no matter what. The enemies are also surprised by the appearance of the new mech. Realizing their comrades have been killed, they assume someone is piloting the triple Highlander. Each mech draws its own weapon. The first robot lunges at the heroes with an axe, but Yuta manages to dodge. The 2 remaining attackers strike, but the hero manages to stop both the spear and the axe with his bare hands just before they hit. The third one is also preparing to strike at the same incredible speed as a mechanical robot. But this blow is also successfully blocked by Mete PX. A sudden jolt forward. Reaching behind, the pilot of our vessel manages to toss the knight with the axe over his back. The brilliant plan to use the knight's armor as a living shield worked. The enemies don't have time to react and end up cutting their comrade in half. Another opponent was defeated with great force inside the mech. After striking the first one in the chest, Yuta is ready to fight the last warrior from the Reldon Empire. Seeing the remains of his comrades, machines, the knight with a 2-handed sword charges into a futile attack, believing he can avenge them. Another strike from the mech and another opponent is defeated in this unfair battle. In the end, only the hero's mech remains on the field, leaving the defeated enemies behind. Yuta moves forward. He says the last soldier should have known better than to launch such an open attack. Deciding to take a break, a group of friends considers where to go to escape their pursuers. Falma suggests the merchant country of Alpaca. It's nearby and not crowded. However, Nanami points out an important detail. The mecha will stand out too much. There are special carriers for fur, but they are used only for industrial purposes or by wealthy people. Seeing Falma frantically thinking about escape plans, Yuta regrets Belfast's death and blames their arrival at the Count's estate with Nanami for it. But the girl interrupts him. Furious, she seeks revenge on the Reldon Empire for her father's death. They will not receive her forgiveness. Nanami catches the wave and suggests avenging the Count, to which Yuta calmly agrees. So they head to Alpaca in search of a powerful mech that Nanami can pilot. Falma suggests that the potential rating of rhodium was miscalculated and is definitely not 2. The mech, which the Triple Highlander couldn't fit into, felt to the hero like an extension of his body, as if he was exceeding the standard. A scavenger is eating a human corpse. A predator tears at the flesh but suddenly flies away. The bird was scared off by a beast that trampled the body like dust underfoot. Minami-sensei was sold to one of the kingdoms. The state treated her well. Food, water, shelter. She was honored and respected as a pilot, but in reality she didn't want this. Being addressed as the deputy commander of Ruriko weighed on her. Orders to advance, military strategies, and not a step back. Natona follows the orders of the squad captain, Mazi. Still, as a teacher, her goal is to ensure all her students return safe and sound. Captain Mazi contacts Minami-sensei on a private line, asking her to find time to talk. She hesitantly agrees. As they advance, the soldiers share information about the enemy's location. She has already adapted to being a Ruriko and follows all the captain's orders. Lined up, the second platoon begins its attack on the enemy, pressing them back. The enemies are surrounded and weakened. They hold the line, but one of the mech pilots spots an enemy soldier approaching. It was the deputy captain, Ruriko, whose skill was impressive despite her lack of experience. With dual swords, the mech defeats its opponent, leaving no chance for escape. Mountains of bodies lie beneath the squad's feet. It's the only way to take control of the area. The remaining pilots surrender and are ordered to leave their mechs to face the victorious side. Minami-sensei wearily wipes the sweat from his forehead. Smoke billows out, obscuring her view of who stepped out of the cabins. A moment later, the young teacher's face freezes in horror. The pilots who emerged from the cockpit turned out to be her students. She shouts their names, hoping they won't be harmed. But the horror, fear, and anger from not understanding how the girls ended up here were evident on the teacher's face. Captain Mazi points a massive weapon, designed to destroy mechs, at the girl. He asks her where the rest of the troops are. In response, Uba Sakura, Minami's student, claims she doesn't know. The young pilot's answer displeased the captain. As a form of torture, he wounded her with the tip of his sword, repeating his question. But the girl was already screaming in pain, panicking, and unable to string 2 words together. The teacher's face freezes with even greater fear for Uba's life. Mazi decides to get rid of the enemy pilot without obtaining valuable information. The girl bursts into tears when the sensei comes to her aid. Quickly reacting, the enraged Minami strikes and blocks the enemy's attack. Her decision stunned the captain, as it was the first time she raised her sword against her own. But there was no doubt in her eyes. She had already chosen to be a shield for those she had trained. The sword of the vice captain, now Minami-sensei, fiercely cut through everything in its path. Each swing reflected the pain she felt when her students were hurt. It wasn't a fight, but a punishment for those who dared to harm her students. Mazi tried to reach her, as Ruriko, an old acquaintance, but his strength was fading. The soldiers were in a panic because she was the one who started the fight, breaking the rules. Some rushed to stop her, but it was too late. Captain Mazi had fallen. Standing over his body was a mech controlled by the teacher. The anger subsided, leaving only silence. The first and second arches couldn't understand what had happened. Shouts mingled with confusion. Everything was falling apart. In a world where a person's worth is measured only by numbers, children kill each other and lose their minds. Minami couldn't allow this. Not this time. All she had left were her students, and she vowed to protect them at any cost. Her voice called the girls to the mechs. Although Sakura was momentarily frozen in shock, she quickly regained her composure. The teacher pointed the way to retreat, trying not to waste a single second. But other knights had already appeared on the horizon. They were driven by a thirst for revenge, as their captain had fallen by his own hand. But for her, it no longer mattered. She had one goal. For her students, she held back her fear. Tying her hair into a ponytail, she prepared to protect them. To find them safe and sound, she set a mental goal for herself, to bring them back home, back to Earth. Revenge no longer mattered. When the heroes reached the trading city of Alpaca, they set out to explore the streets, markets, and even stadiums. But behind the bright facade, there's always another side, where the roads end and poverty begins. Falma, with her face hidden under a hood, insisted on selling the jewelry. Yuta couldn't change her mind. He had to give in. He simply asked if they were comfortable and suggested stashing the item they got from Belfast. To determine the value of this trinket, they asked different vendors for the price. The main goal was to find out who knew the real price and who might be dangerous. As they walked past the stalls, they noticed how the offers varied. Some thought their earrings were fake, while others offered huge sums. The group was confused. Were they being overpaid, or was their merchandise undervalued? Finally, they began discussing the possibility of going to the dealer who offered $2 million. But before they could decide, an unfamiliar voice interrupted their thoughts. A tall man, overhearing the conversation, warned them, if they choose that merchant, they'll regret it. Yuta didn't believe him right away, so he asked for his name. His name was Gene. Now he was their new advisor. He explained that the proposed amount was a trick. The merchant hoped to lower the price at the last moment. This was his well-known tactic. The main character pondered. Meanwhile, Jean offered his services for a profitable sale. He will help sell the product at a high price, asking for only 10% of the deal. If it doesn't work out, no one loses anything. The proposal seemed reasonable. The group agreed, as the chance to earn money in the current situation was too valuable to pass up. Jean and they visited a few more traders. One offered 10 million, another 15. Jean consistently held his ground, not giving in, and kept raising the stakes. At one point he pretended to leave, explaining how valuable their stones were. The master jeweler, not wanting to lose the deal, instantly raised the price to 30 million. Jean, after calculating the profit, decided to ask why they needed such an amount. Yuta admitted they wanted to buy fur and get revenge. The man was surprised. After all, the pilot only had 2 rudia, though he kept quiet about it. Then the heroes uncovered the secret. One of their trump cards was Nananami, a triple Highlander. Jean was breathless. It was the first time he had seen a score over 10,000. He doubted their words, unwilling to delve deeper. But soon he realized they weren't lying. He then explained the true cost of a mech for a Highlander, at least 100 million. The heroes were stunned once again. Jumping up, Jean remembered the tournament. Winning it could bring not only fame, but also the fur itself as a prize. There was a chance. All it took was the courage to act. Dawn illuminated the city. Through the alleys, along the walls and towers, they reached the Colosseum. There, where the clash of metal and cries of pain are heard daily, new stories began. The Gladiator Arena is the epicenter of power in Alpaca. Occasionally Highlanders would appear there, but this was a rare occurrence. Jean sensed that the mech draw was about to happen. After all, significant bets were being placed in the stands on the mechs fighting in the arena pit. The fight was already raging in the arena. One of the fighters was trying to turn the tide of the battle. The main character felt the call of the arena. Jean promised to help, and he believed him. The girls were worried. Nanami anxiously looked at Yuta, concerned that their opponents might be stronger. Then Jean asked how much rudia he had. Smiling, he replied, 2. He asked them not to doubt him or his intentions. Turning to Jean, Yuta confirmed that he indeed had only 2 rudia. Jean was shocked. It was too small a number to participate. Then the man suggested that Nanami should pilot, but he soon heard that the mech doesn't accept anyone else. Only one person can control it, and that's Yuta. This surprised the first guy even more. Such a powerful mech with only 2 rudias? Impossible. But he had to believe it. At that moment, the announcer called the second match. The new participant is Shinsuke Yamakura, champion, winner, legend. His opponent is the monk Aldanta. He has 1,000 victories to his name. To Yuta, Shinsuke was a classmate, calm and kind, even though he didn't know him well enough to say that. Once. Now he was a different person. His smile turned cruel, and his gaze was filled with madness. Time in the arena had changed him beyond recognition. Yamakura changed completely. He absorbed the arena's style, became ruthless, and showed no mercy to the weak. Fueled by adrenaline, Shinsuke was the first to attack. This struck Yuta. The young man he once was seemed unrecognizable, and this distortion of perception made the hero feel uneasy. The fight began. His movements were precise, but the opponent's experience was also crucial. The monk's mech reacted faster than the eye could follow. In the next attempt, Yamakura's attack was thwarted by a skillful move from the opponent. The first one got angry about it, but the monk just smirked. From behind Aldant, a claw emerged, a hidden weapon capable of inflicting deadly damage and standing up to the strongest mechs. The monk began explaining the mechanism. He believed that no one could overcome it. The guy's mech made a maneuver that changed the course of the battle. It was close but precise. The audience held their breath, thinking the youngest participant was done for. But this didn't scare the main character's classmate at all. Each participant had a trick up their sleeve for emergencies. Both refused to give up. The mechanisms creaked, the metal bent, but the battle continued. A blow to Aldant's armor was devastating. The monk's mech fell apart. He realized the battle was lost. Horror was frozen on his face. Shinsuke shouted something as a final word and finished him off. Crack, strike, finale. The arena erupted in applause once more. For the winner, life and victory. For the loser, death. Yuta, watching this, realized it was indeed his former classmate, but no longer the person he once knew during their school years. Inside this fighter, nothing remains of Shinsuke-kun. Only the appearance. And even that is questionable. Jin tried once more to dissuade Yuta. He believed that a monk should set an example. But if achieving his goal means defeating even him, Yuta will fight. He won't back down. Not now. So the next task is to find the first opponent in the rankings, someone wealthy and proud. While the arena buzzed, one of the men secluded himself in a cafe and silently drank. One bottomless glass after another.
Jean finds a suitable opponent for Yuta, but he is not eager to fight the newcomer. Jean offers the Red Dragon a high bet, and he still agrees to the fight, confident of his victory. Jean smiles maliciously. Yuta stands in front of the mag machine, thinking about how this is his first time piloting a machine in combat. He watches the other participants in the duel fight. Before he is supposed to enter the arena, he is asked if he has a nickname, and Yuta says that he doesn't have one. A nickname is needed for registration, and the administrator asks him to come up with a suitable name for the mechanism magician. The guy thinks and remembers his favorite anime, and the name of the main character. He gives his magic mechanism the name Alio. The arena is full of spectators. It's time for Yuta to get into the mag mechanism, because it's already being announced to the public. Jean calls out to him. He has no doubt that Yuta will win, but asks him to pretend that the victory was very difficult for him, as this will affect his next fight. The arena announces Yuta's opponent, the Red Dragon, and his mechanism Holga. Yuta looks at the betting board and realizes that no one has bet on him. The fight begins. Yuta swings and hits the Red Dragon, shocking the man. The guy analyzes the situation and realizes that he can win with one blow, but remembers Jin's parting words. One more blow, and the enemy is defeated. The mechanism magician falls. The spectators watch the defeat of the Red Dragon. The stands explode with shouts. Jean is indignant. He could not even imagine that everything would turn out exactly like this. Yuta realizes that he let Jin down and now things are bad for him. The Red Dragon comes to his senses and says that he underestimated his opponent. The man warns Yuta that he will fight seriously now that he has seen his capabilities. Yuta is glad that his opponent can still fight and accepts his killer move. The mechanisms clash again in battle. Their controllers glare at each other. The Red Dragon does not understand what is happening. The man is shocked that his magic mechanism is falling apart from Yuta's attack and says that this can't be happening. Yuta wins the battle. He is declared the winner. Jin meets Yuta, who climbed out of the mechanism with a dissatisfied face. He scolds him for not listening to him. The guy apologizes. He understands that now it will be difficult for him to find a suitable opponent. Nanami and Falma come out with a cart of the gold Yuta won, and he is happy that he deserves credit for it. They go to a tavern to eat and celebrate their victory. Yuta is upset because now it will be difficult for him to find an opponent because he overdid it. He is angry with Jin because he drinks a lot and asks him to fix the situation. Jean tells him about his secret plan. 3 people enter the tavern, and Yuta recognizes them as his classmates, calling them by name. The guy is happy to meet his acquaintances and is interested in their lives. They recognize their classmate, but make it clear that they have no connection in this world. Moreover, they now consider themselves much higher in status than Yuta. One of the guys, Haranishi, says that Yuta's Rudia potential is too low, and the guy starts yelling, arguing that it's just a number. They start arguing about respect. Nanami intervenes in the argument and asks them to stop. Falma supports her friend, arguing that they are friends, and friends should not say such offensive things to each other. Haranishi is amazed that girls can so easily interfere with their conversation, and calls Yuta a slave. He approaches Falma and threatens her to obey. He reaches for her hood in an attempt to pull it off. The attempt succeeds, and Haranishi sees before him not a simple girl, but a beast man. He screams throughout the tavern, frightening the visitors. Yuta punches his former classmate, causing him to come to his senses. The boy yells at him, calling him a monster worse than a beast man, because he equates everyone based on the principle of weapon potential and enjoys humiliating other people. A bottle is dropped loudly on the table, and John intervenes in the conversation. He clarifies the status of Yuta's classmates and suggests settling the dispute in the Colosseum. The arguing boys turn to look at him. Haranishi is unsure of Jin's sanity, but Yuta believes him because he reminds him of his plan. Jean proposes that the three of them fight against Yuta alone and makes a big bet, offering only one condition: a crushing victory. Yuta's classmates are surprised by this turn of events and do not believe Jin's words, to which he says that their refusal will mean that they are afraid of Yuta. The boys accept the fight. The arena is filled with people. The participants of the special battle are announced. Falma notices the weapon in the hands of the mechanism mage Yuta, and Jin explains that fighting against three with fists will look strange. A loud voice announces the names of Yuta's three opponents, detailing the number of their victories. The odds are displayed on the board. Jin shouts words of encouragement to Yuta, who is joined by Falma. The fight begins. Yuta's classmates are confident of their victory because his Rudia potential is too low. They consider this fight pointless. Yuta makes the first strike against the mag mechanisms. The rivals' mechanisms are flying apart. Yuta doesn't stop, he continues the fight. Blow after blow, the guy makes his opponents exhausted. Yuta is actively attacking. The opponents are shocked by what is happening. Haranishi finally understands what he signed up for by agreeing to this fight. He can't believe Yuta's strength, which doesn't match the figure of Rudia's potential. Calling Yuta a cheater, Haranishi is at a loss because he doesn't want to lose. After all, if he loses, he will lose everything. Yuta angrily replies that he doesn't care. Another attack and a strong blow. Three opponents are defeated. The winner is declared Yuta, and his magic mechanism Aleo. Yuta looks at the damage he's caused and thinks about how his classmates have changed since coming to this world. He wonders if everyone who came here has changed for the worse. The boy descends from the mag mechanism. He is met by his friends, and he swears to himself that he will not become like his classmates. Somewhere in the castle, training in the use of a magic mechanism is taking place. The one sitting in the mechanism is tired from training and sighs heavily. The girl closes her eyes for a moment but immediately notices the danger behind her and alerts her to it. Her mag mechanism is attacked, but she dodges the attack. The attacker attacks again and takes off. The girl calms down and waits for the landing. The attack becomes stronger, the blows are more powerful. The mechanisms continue to fight. The elders watch Yui's training and praise her. She has become the strongest in a month, thanks to training. Yui is embarrassed and says that Yuto should be thanked. In response, Yuto tells the girl that she has a talent for development and suggests that next time she try her hand at a real fight at the front. Yuto asks Ito about fulfilling his request regarding the guy with low Rudia potential. The man briefly tells him that Yuto was found and there were negotiations with the merchant who bought him, but the guy managed to escape. The merchant was punished for refusing to pay the ransom so that such a thing would not happen again. Yui overhears their conversation. She is upset because she is worried about Yuta, but she is reassured by the fact that all their efforts are now focused on finding the guy. Falma and Nanami admire the decor of the inn they arrived at. Jin and Yuta discuss their situation, and the former says that the latter will not be able to earn money from fights for long and it will all end soon. Yuta is not ready for this. Jin explains that after defeating 3 opponents, everyone realized how strong he is, and soon there will be no opponents left. Yuta doesn't know what to do. Nanami and Falma break the bed, and Jean and Yuta look at them in surprise. Jin says they've earned enough to buy a mag mechanism. Yuta says he wants to buy 2 copies and a transporter for them. The guys discuss the types of mechanisms they want to buy and realize that they need to have at least one more fight to make sure they have enough money to cover all their desires. Jin remembers one fighter who can fight Yuta, but he would not like him to fight him because the opponent is not easy, and his Rudia potential is quite high. Yuta weighs Jin's words and decides to fight anyway. He says that this will be his last battle, and he is sure that he will win. Jin is amazed at Yuta's self-confidence, but he is not going to dissuade him. He clarifies about the bet. Yuta is willing to bet everything he has, and Jean thinks it's complete nonsense. At night, when Jean is asleep, Falma and Nanami talk to Yuta. They suggest that they all move in together in a quiet place after they avenge Falma's father. Yuta says that he would like that too. Nanami asks the boy if he is going to fight, and he answers yes. The girl asks him to be careful, and Yuta assures her that he will be fine. He thinks that he is bluffing, but he cannot worry his loved ones. Yuta comes to his opponent, who turns out to be a young girl. Neither of them expected to fight each other. The girl clarifies the conditions of the duel, and Jean voices the amount they have set. She says that she is not very interested in money, so she is ready to agree if she sets the condition herself. She offers the loser to become the winner's property. Yuta is excited. Jean refuses and says that this is mockery, to which the girl responds that otherwise there will be no fight. Yuta agrees to the condition. The girl likes Yuta more and more. Jean tries to dissuade his friend, but Yuta is confident in his victory. Jean is again irritated by Yuta's self-confidence. The girl introduces herself as Aluna, calling Yuta a boy. Yuta introduces herself in return and asks to be called by his first name. Aluna does not hide the fact that she wants to make Yuta her slave, and wishes them both good luck. Yuta reciprocates. A lot of people gathered to watch the fight. Everyone is discussing the obvious outcome and is not going to risk betting on Yuta. Jean watches the stands fill up and says that so many people came because of rumors of money bets. Yuta asks if anyone bet on him. Falma join him, saying that they believe in Yuta. The guy replies that he will not let them down and will definitely win. The fight begins. The participants are announced. Aluna, who has not had a suitable opponent for a long time, is named the strongest warrior and queen. And Yuta, who is dizzy with success after several victories. Everyone is interested to know what chances the newcomer has. Aluna wishes Yuta luck by calling him a boy again. The boy snaps back and reminds the girl of his name. The fight begins. Aluna attacks, finally calling Yuta by name. The girl beats Yuta's magic mechanism, and he watches her fight. Aluna attacks again, and her attack is too fast for Yuta. She doesn't stop hitting and laughs at Yuta, asking if he's going to attack her. The guy answers yes, but thinks that it's quite difficult for him to hold on. The battle continues. The mage mechanisms strike each other with blow after blow. Yuta attacks. He manages to disable Aluna's mechanism for a moment. The girl likes her rival. He is the first one who was able to damage her mechanism. Yuta is confident that he will win. Aluna is becoming more and more interested in how this battle will end, and she is fired up with excitement. The girl makes a dash and disappears from sight. Yuta doesn't understand what's going on. Jean is watching the fight, shocked by what's happening. Yuta gets hit hard. Aluna's mechanism appears in his field of vision and strikes again. Yuta is tense, trying to comprehend what is happening. The guy's magic mechanism is on fire. The people in the stands are cheering. Falma and Nanami are screaming, worried about Yuta. Yuta asks Jean a question, and Jean confirms his guess that Aluna's acceleration is the result of concentrating on the value of the ore's potential in order to increase it. Yuta wants to find out. Aluna calls Yuta a fool because he has no idea about energy concentration, yet he decided to fight her. She wants to finish the fight. Yuta knows he's in a pretty bad spot. He's unlikely to be able to fend off another attack like that. He succeeds, but Aluna's mechanism attacks him again. It looks like a trap. Yuta's mechanism body is almost completely destroyed. He has to defend himself blindly. He can't decide how to build his defense. In addition, he doesn't know how to use the weapon's potential. The guy remembers his life in the real world. He used to practice Aikido and go to training. He was often late, which is why he got it from his father. The guy was upset when he came to the training, which turned out to be meditation. But the trainer explained to him what meditation was for. If you eliminate unnecessary sounds inside and around you, you can find peace of mind. Then Yuta decided to try meditation. Aluna attacks, but Yuta parries her blow. The girl does not understand what is happening, because her blow should have shattered the mechanism. A strange aura is drawn around Yuta's mechanism, which Aluna notices. She watches Yuta, who, it seems to her, has changed quite a bit beyond recognition. She is still confident of her victory. The mechanism's eyes are glowing. Aluna is about to attack, but gets hit by Yuta, a fool again, as her mechanism falls, struck by the guy's blow. He wins. Everyone celebrates Yuta's victory, and that they have now saved up the required amount. Aluna feeds Yuta from her hands. Yuta is embarrassed by being fed and surprised. He finds it strange that Aluna, his rival, is celebrating his victory with them. The girl says that she is happy for the one who is now her master. Aluna says that she liked Yuta, and now she will not fight anymore. The guy is pleased that she likes him. Jean, with his mouth full of food, says that Aluna will be useful for their future affairs. Yuta is surprised, because he has not previously dedicated him to his plans. Jean explains that after Yuta defeated a man with such high Rudia potential, it was time to act. After all, he is the strongest. He asks about Yuta's wishes, and he says that he would like to defeat Rudavan. Jean and Aluna are surprised by Yuta's desire, and ask him many questions related to the activities of spies, thinking that he was sent from another country. But Yuta replies that the soldiers of the countries fighting each other do the same. He also doesn't want Nanami and Falma to be in danger. The girls protest, shouting that they are strong and ready to fight. Yuta shouts back that war is no joke. Jean suggests that Yuta muster up the strength to make a reasoned claim in response. The guy thinks about how in this world people are already using Earthlings for their own interests. Aluna brings Yuta to her garage with the mechanisms and says that now they belong to Yuta because she herself belongs to him. They were standing in the garage without being used anyway, and now Yuta can change everything. She wants to show him something else. The girl introduces him to Lisa, the best mechanic in the area. Yuta offers her his hand, but she rejects it. Liza yells at Yuta, saying that she hates him and that he shouldn't dare hurt Aluna. Aluna calms her friend down, saying that Yuta won in a fair fight. Liza doesn't calm down, and Aluna suggests that she leave. Jean enters the garage, and Aluna says that Yuta will go with him. The whole company comes to a place where they sell mechanisms. Nanami and Falma name their values of Rudia, which amazes Aluna. After all, for Rudavan, their numbers are quite large. Nanami and Falma stare at the mechanisms and discuss how much ordnance is needed for each of them. A merchant who already knows Aluna comes out to meet them. She asks to pick up a mechanism for them for a certain value of the weapon. The merchant is shocked by the power, but points to the right mechanism. It tells about the functionality of a large, powerful mechanism. Falma likes its appearance, and Aluna talks about its power. Yuta invites Nanami to climb inside the mechanism, and the happy girl happily agrees. Yuta is ready to buy the mechanism. Jean stops Yuta, saying that he wants to buy the mechanism for Nanami. He asks the merchant for the price. The cunning man names a price that is too high, but gives a discount. But Jean is still not ready to spend so much gold. The merchant agrees to Jean's terms and even offers him to work for him. But Jean refuses, citing the fact that he wants to stay with the guys. After purchasing the gear for Nanami, they are left to choose the gear for Falma and her weapon value. The merchant offers them a mechanism and, describing its functions, says that it can be used to fly. Falma's eyes light up. The merchant says that learning to fly takes time. He quotes the price of the mechanism. Falma says that she wants this mechanism, and Yuta is ready to buy it for her, but with some reservations. Jean suggests not to haggle over the price, but at the same time asks for the weapon as a bonus. The boys leave the shop with two mechanisms, in which Falma and Nanami are already sitting, happy. Yuta is glad that he was able to please them. He asks them not to rush into mastering the mechanisms. Aluna watches them and says that Falma is like her mecha. Falma mechanism comes closer, and the girl asks Yuta if she can fly. The guy asks her to wait with flying and get used to the controls. Falma's mechanism takes off to the exclamations of Yuta and Aluna. The guy is surprised that the mechanism can actually fly. Falma is happy. She calls herself a formidable and calm dragon. The guys return to the garage after the experiments. Jean meets them and asks how everything went. After a discussion, everyone comes to the conclusion that they need to decide where to go next. Jean suggests heading to the Republic of Kirks. Yuta, as an Earthling, is told that Kirks is currently at war with a neighboring republic, and they may well need new fighters. Jean adds that there are many gold mines in Kirks, and Yuta is thinking about resources that are beneficial to the world. Before setting off on his journey, Jean talks about making an important decision. Nobody understands what he's talking about, and the guy talks about how they still haven't decided on a name for the team. Aluna and Nanami decide to have a fight. Jean commands the start. Aluna is confident of her victory. The mechs enter the fray, Yuta enjoys the combat and the new mech functions. Aluna understands that it will be difficult for her to defeat Nanami because she has more potential in Rudia. Nanami is happy that she was praised. The mechs attack each other. and the pilots talk about training that will make them even better at fighting. Jean and Lisa watch from the sidelines. Yuta is exhausted from the fight. Falma says that she saw a lake nearby where everyone could relax. Nanami happily agrees, but the girls realize that no one has swimsuits. Aluna comes to the rescue, offering to share things. They all need to rest. Yuta sits on the shore with his feet in the water. Someone calls out to him. 4 girls in bathing suits appear before the eye. They look at the lake and ask many questions about it. Aluna invites Yuta to go swimming, but he refuses. Lisa threatens the guy so that he does not stare at Aluna. Jean comes to the lake and invites Yuta to go fishing. The guy agrees, examines the fishing mechanism, and thinks about whether he will be able to catch anything. After a while, Yuta gets a bite and pulls out a fish. The guy is happy with the catch, until he sees Jean with baskets full of fish. The holiday is a success for everyone. Jean hopes that they will have more such meetings in the future. Yuta would like to work on the arrow mechanisms, but Aluna asks him not to think about it, suggesting to add magic bullets. Yuta has never heard of such things. Aluna and Falma explain to him how magic bullets work. They have their pros and cons, but they will be much better than without them. The Kirk's Republic Ministry of Internal Affairs is holding a meeting to welcome the new fighters. The chief thanks them for volunteering to join them, as their budget did not allow them to take mercenaries. The pay for the volunteers will be based on how each one performs in battle. One of the volunteers wants to know more, and the secretary tells him about the gradation of destroyed mechanisms and the pay for them. Jean joins the conversation. He says that everything is fine with him, but he wants an additional bonus for his team. The management meets him halfway and assigns additional payment. Yuta is recognized in the crowd. The girl yells at him, accusing him of risking their lives. And because of this, she is not going to help him. A guy comes out of the crowd and apologizes to Yuta, asking the girl to keep quiet, but adds that he is not going to participate in the scam. Yuta is called by Nanami, who says that Jean is waiting for him. Yuta recognizes the boy and girl from the crowd as acquaintances, who also did not expect to meet him here. They thought that the boy was sold into slavery due to his low rudia value. Yuta says that it is a long story, but now he is a mercenary like them. Horibe, a boy in the crowd, is confused as to how Yuta can operate a mechanism with a low rudia value, and is reluctant to agree to the offer to watch each other's backs. The girl, Imamura, continues to accuse Yuta of deceiving the country. The military meeting continues. Jean talks about the mission to retake Ruba's fortress, calling it a joint operation with other mercenary teams. Yuta finds this mission too serious, and hopes to join Kirk's regular army. Jean discusses the number of mechanisms their enemy possesses. He explains the structure of the ballista, which is similar to a crossbow. The difference in the number of mechanisms can be overcome by developing the right strategy. He believes that 4 warriors can change the course of the battle, but other mercenaries will get in the way. Jean plans to discuss the final strategy in the morning and choose a worthy option. When Jean and the guys offer cooperation to another team, they are refused. The leader of the mercenary team does not want to trust his flank to suspicious people. He heard from a comrade that there are swindlers among the volunteers. The leader says that if no one agrees to fight the Iron Knights, Utah's team, then they will have to be sent to the West alone. Yuta agrees to the proposal. Jean is not pleased. In their residence, they discuss strategy. Jean doesn't like that they are going to the West alone. The management strategy is not thought out. He explains what he installed in Yuta's machine. It's a recording device which he uses to ask Yuta to report on the situation as often as possible. There was already something attached to Yuta's mechanism arm. Aluna asked Liza to install a firearm for him in that place with a magic bullet. But it is advisable to use it only as a distraction. Time's up. Everyone is ready for battle. The operation begins. Aluna commands Falme to gain altitude and prepare to open fire. Yuta is to create a distraction while they and Nanami outflank the enemy and destroy them. The pilots and their mechanisms are ready for battle. Everyone understood everything. The enemy army attacks the mechanisms. They repel the attack. The battle continues. Falma attacks from above. The mechs stand on the battlefield and assess the scale of the battle. It seems that there are too many opponents compared to the information they were given. Aluna asks Yuta to finish here and move to help the others so that they don't have time to be destroyed. Falma attacks from above again. Her fighting style pleases Yuta, who watches her. The guy shouts to Falma about the location of the last surviving enemy. In fear that the girl will not make it in time, he remembers Aluna's words about distracting the enemy with a magic bullet and decides to use it. The mechanism fires a bullet. The bullet flies into the wall. Yuta is shocked. Aluna reacts calmly but says that she has never seen such a powerful magic bullet. A huge hole appears in the wall opposite them. From the deployment site, Jean relays a message to Yuta that the allies on the southern side are already exhausted and they need to retreat to help them. Yuta agrees and says that he himself will go to help the allies. The captain of the southern flank understands that they have no strength left and need to call for reinforcements. There are too many enemies, and it will be difficult to find a strong ally. The captain asks for help from Horabe and Imamura, but they refuse, saying that they are holding off a stronger enemy. An attacking enemy flies towards Imamura's mechanism. Horibe shouts a warning to her friend. The attack of a hostile mechanism is repelled by the mechanism of Yuta, who came to the rescue in time. Horibe is shocked by the power of the assistant. Yuta commands from his mechanism about the movement of the army. They obey him. Jean watches the battle from his base of operations with boredom. He knows about the strength of Yuta and his friends, who can do anything. He realizes that after the fight, there will be even more problems. Nanami and Falma report that there are no more enemies in sight. Aluna asks what they should do next, and Yuta suggests covering the southern flank. The captain of the southern flank suspects Yuta and his crew of targeting the prey. Yuta is furious, but is stopped by Aluna, who says she has no time to deal with idiots. The battle ended in victory. The Iron Knights experienced impressive success. At the meeting, the general discusses the battle report, according to which one of the teams ended the battle with a defeat. He hopes that the report is not fake. Jean watches the mercenary commander of the Beast Kings smile as the secretary talks about Yuta's team stealing victories. She believes the recording device was rigged to earn a perfect score. Yuta defends himself. The general continues his speech and says that there were too many opponents, and their victory was made possible by 4 unrivaled units. Jean tries to prove to the general that the capture of the port was accomplished thanks to his command, but the secretary, relying on the reports, says that it was the merit of the southern flank. Jean is openly angry. The commander of the Beast King's mercenaries turns to the general again and asks to rely on the reports. The general says that they have gathered not only to discuss the victory, but also about the next operation. Chaos reigns on the border of the Chirakia Empire. Amina praises Yui for becoming very strong and defeating the enemy. Yui says that she is still far from Amina, so she is not going to leave her. The girls are called to the general. He calls them the strongest group on the continent and thanks them for their work. But there have been attempts by the enemy to penetrate the border area, so he needs their help again, but it's better to discuss this at headquarters. At the headquarters of the Kirk's Republic, the defeat in Chiraki is being discussed. Meade the general asks his mercenaries to go there. He wants to launch a large-scale extermination operation with his mercenaries and their machines. The general asks to do without fraud this time, pointing to Yuta's group. Jean tries to justify himself, but the general trusts his reporters. The commander of the Beast King's mercenaries conspires with the general, and Jean understands why he accuses their group of fraud. Yuta operates the mechanism and prepares for the operation to invade Chirikia. He is informed of strong reinforcements from the enemy. Mechanisms clash in battle. Aluna's spear seemed too sharp to Yuta, and she apologizes for the effect of the Rudia concentration. The exclamations of the allies are heard through the transmitter. The leader of the Beast King's mercenaries asks for reinforcements because his army has been completely defeated by the enemy. Yuta hears the call and calls Jean for a status report. Jean says that the Beast King's mercenary group has been wiped out. Aluna is ready to go after Yuta if he decides to help. The guy has a bad feeling about this. He points his mechanism in the direction from which he hears a call for help. Enemy mechanisms stand in front of each other. Their pilots do not see each other. They see only the color of the mechanism, black and white. Before the battle, Amina and Yui drink tea and listen to thanks. They are called the Invincible Duo, but it is impossible to single out one of them. The general called them to convey important information. The general speaks of a strong enemy army and the Beast King's group that they will face in the next battle. He warns the girls to be careful. Yui puts her hair up and goes out to Amina, who is already waiting for her. Amina suggests that her friend go shopping and buy some clothes, since Yui always wears only a military uniform. Yui agreed to Amina's proposal. The mechanisms attack each other. Yui watches her opponent and realizes that she has a strange premonition. The girl attacks. Yuta tries to focus on the weapon. The mechanisms collide and attack. They destroy everything around them in an attempt to protect themselves. The stone columns are broken into small fragments. The mechanisms continue to fight. Yuta has a hard time fighting because the opponent is very fast. Allies come to help, and the guy thanks the girls, asking them to be careful. Amina comes to Yui's aid and apologizes for being late. Aluna analyzes the rivals' mechanisms. They have a clear numerical advantage, but it's not just the mechanisms that are a hindrance, but also their pilots. The girl inquires about Yuta's condition, and he says that his opponent is very strong. Aluna quickly formulates a strategy and asks Nanami and Falca to cover Yuta. She tells Yuta that only he can handle the pilot who controls the mechanism. Yuta is confident in his abilities. He attacks. Yui warns Amina that their opponent is quite strong and has a numerical advantage. Amina takes note of her allies' words. Mechanisms clash in battle. Yui's mind is filled with memories from her past. It's Yuta and her. The mechanisms continue to fight. The pilots cannot see each other, but both have a strange feeling. Yui's mechanism is attacked by an enemy. She defends herself and remembers how she once met a crying girl while on a school trip. When asked what happened to her, the girl answered that she lost a brooch in the river that her mother gave her. Yui climbed into the river without thinking. The battle continues. The girl told Yui that the river was dangerous, but Yui only replied that she was strong and not afraid. Yui's mechanism repels the attack. The blows continue. Yuki can't stop remembering how Yuta joined her in searching for the brooch. The white mechanism attacks again. Yui remembers Yuta finding the brooch in the water. The girl was grateful to them and ran home after the couple asked her to be careful. They got dirty then. Yui couldn't put her shoes on, and Yuta said that even though his mother would scold him, he was happy to help Yui find the brooch. Then he compared the search for the brooch to a treasure hunt and said that he had fun. Yui is tense from the battle, as is Yuta. But both are overcome with memories and the fact that they both had to thank each other. That day they fell in love, Yui with Yuta and Yuta with Yui. They had fun sitting together on the shore and thinking about falling in love. The mechanisms attack each other. Yuta delivers a punch that breaks Yui's mechanism. Their memories are also shattered into pieces. Yuta realizes that he is winning, but is surprised to find himself drawn into old memories. He pushes away thoughts of the past and inquires about the state of his allies. Nanami fights well, Aluna copes well too. Falma helps Aluna from above, and the girl asks him to go and help Nanami. Yuta accepts the order. Yui realizes that she has lost for the first time, but she doesn't feel depressed or anything negative. She feels relieved. Yui's mechanism can still move, but she doesn't want to attack even though it's her only choice now. She hears Amina's voice. Yuta notices the enemy's movement and tells his allies that the battle is not over yet. Yui flies to help Amin, whose mechanism is aiming at Nanami. Nanami screams. Yuta comes to her aid. He blames himself with recklessness. Nanami's mechanism is strong enough, but the girl still needs help. Yui doesn't want to leave Amina because she is her first friend in this world, so the price comes to help. Amina thanks her friend. Amina fights Nanami, who only now notices their weapons. She yells at Yui to attack. Yuta watches and analyzes the fight. If he suddenly rushes into the battle between Nanami and another mecha, nothing will come of it. Yuta takes a swing and makes a decision. Fires a magic bullet from its mechanism towards the enemy. The bullet flies into Yui's mechanism. Amina screams and rushes to help. She covers Yui, and the bullet hits her mechanism and Amina herself. Yui watches what is happening in shock. Moments later, Yui realizes that the bullet has hit Imana, who does not respond to her voice and requests to respond. Aluna asks Nanami about her condition. She replies that everything is fine and she no longer sees any enemies in her field of vision. Other mechanisms come to Yui's aid. They ask the girl to back off, but she doesn't want to leave Amina and calls her. Yui and her mech are forcibly pulled from the battlefield. Aluna notices the Elysia crest on the mech. The leader of the Beast King group has been watching the battle all this time. He smiles at the victory and thinks that next time he should raise the stakes. The disappearance of the black mechanism surprises the boys, but Aluna explains that it was recalled. Yuta hears a voice from the broken mechanism. Its pilot is probably still alive. The allies protest, but Yuta is going to help him. He says that now it is not an enemy, but a wounded person. Imina hears that someone is approaching her. She understands that this is an enemy, because she lost. The girl remembers the promise she made to Yui and asks her for forgiveness for not being able to keep it. Yuta assesses the girl's wounds and asks Aluna if she can do anything about it. He talks about a medical capsule and is about to carry the injured girl to the transport bay. Imina is tied to medical equipment. Jean scolds Yuta for bringing the enemy to them. Yuta apologizes to Jean and asks Aluna if she can really heal the girl. Aluna says that her injuries are normal, but due to the outdated mechanism, it will take longer than usual to treat her. Yuta inquires about the situation at the front and is told that the enemy army has been defeated, but the reinforcements were still quite strong. Aluna says that the reinforcements consisted of magical mechanisms, but the country's coat of arms and color were changed. There is no doubt about the origin of these mechanisms. They are definitely from Elysia. Jean is surprised and does not believe what was said. Falma confirms Aluna's words. Utah has heard the name of this country somewhere, but he can't remember exactly where it was. He wonders if the Kirk's leadership knows anything about it. Jean says that their intelligence is definitely not worth relying on. He also says that if they are not paid this time, they will have to leave the country. Yuta agrees. The battle is being discussed in the command center. The general praises Yuta's team, but says that they refuse to support the Beast King's mercenary group. Because of this, he will not pay them again. Yuta talks about terminating the contract and not wanting to fight for this country. The leader of the Beast King's mercenary group is shocked. Yuta reiterates his reluctance to engage in such unfair battles, and now Kirks will have to rely on those he considers the strongest. Yui comes to the cemetery with flowers. Yuto is already sitting there. He tells her that now they will avenge Emina's death together. Yui blames herself for the fact that everything happened before her eyes and she could not do anything. Yuto informs her of the Emperor's decision to destroy the Beast King's mercenaries and the Kirk's Republic without taking prisoners of war and the possibility of surrender. Yui is angry at her opponents, and she agrees with the Emperor, just like Yuto. In the castle, Linnell searches for Nagisa. The girl has information about Yuta, who Nagisa was interested in. She talks about the guy escaping after killing the merchant who bought him. Linnell also tells Nagisa that her father is looking for her. This is related to her first mission. Nagisa hopes that Yuta is alive and well. Father asks Nagisa to act as an escort at a meeting of leaders of neighboring countries. He would like to show off the semi-radar, the pride of the country, so the choice fell on Nagisa. A huge mechanism hangs on the transporter. Linnell explains that this meeting is of great strategic importance for the country, and it would be good to have support in the form of neighboring states. On the agenda of the meeting this time will be the suspicious activity and the buildup of military power of the Rudge Empire, which has begun to purchase many mag mechanisms and hire pilots for them. This means that they are preparing for war, and the meeting will be devoted to peaceful resolution of conflicts. The execution of the leader of the mercenaries, the King of Beasts, will soon take place in the central square of the capital of the Republic of Kirks. The leader is tied to a pole. A girl approaches him and asks if he knows who she is. After a negative answer, Yui introduces herself as the pilot of the mecha that was destroyed in the recent battle. The leader sarcastically smirks at the fact that they were defeated by some girl. Yui asks about the pilot who was in the golden mechanism. The mercenary laughs loudly and says that the pilot of the golden mechanism was not a mercenary of the King of Beasts, but if he had not appropriated all the achievements of the Knights of Steel, they would have ended up with the enemy. The general, tied behind the mercenary leader, is angry, and he says that he could not act openly. The general calls the leader a fool and says that if he had not driven the boys away, they would not be tied to this pole now. The leader replies that it is too late to change anything and suggests that they die peacefully. A man approaches Yui and asks her to go down to the barricades. The general asks about the veracity of the results that were provided to him. The leader says that he did not expect that everything would turn out this way with the departure of the boys. Without the knights, they were routed. Yui walks down the steps as the execution takes place behind her. Nanami is bored and asks Jean to get out of the wilderness. Aluna agrees with the girl and says that she received some interesting news that they need to discuss. In the newspaper, Jean reads about the fall of Kirks. Elysia deployed the best pilots to win the war. Aluna says that she did not have the opportunity to cooperate with them, but she knows for sure that they are real monsters. Nanami, who has gone too far, screams, and Yuta asks her to be careful. A huge man comes out of the bushes. He doesn't scare Nanami. The girl only calls him huge. Yuta wonders if they disturbed his peace. The man apologizes for scaring him and says that there are many animals in this area, and the iron box made him think of poachers. Yuta realizes that the man is talking about the storage of the machines and reassures him that they are not aimed at killing animals. The man introduces himself as Lorgo and calls the boys good people. Yuta introduces himself in return. Lorgo says he loves animals and wants to protect the animals of this forest. Yuta calls him a kind person, and Lorgo tells him about his mother, who asked him to always be kind. His parents died, and now he is lonely. Yuta offers Lorgo friendship so that he will not be sad. Following Yuta, Nanami and Falma also offer Lorgo friendship. The big man cries with happiness. He is invited as a guest to the iron box. John watches as Lorgo eats his food. Lorgo enjoys the treat and eats a lot. Aluna asks Lorgo where he lives. He answers that his house is nearby, and Jean offers to give him a lift because it could be dangerous to go alone. Lorgo thanks them for their kindness and invites everyone to visit him. Yuta agrees. Jean doubts that Lorgo is showing the right way, but he is confident in his words. The transporter stops, and Lorgo again voices his invitation. His house is a huge castle. Aluna asks Lorgo who he is, and he replies that he learned last month that he belonged to the local lords. He invites them into his house, but it is almost empty. The guys assure him that everything is fine, because in order to examine everything here, it will take more than one day. Jean is curious about Liza's absence. Aluna says that she likes solitude. They approach the largest room, which is equipped with a security device. Lorgo opens the room and tells him that his father left him the power to protect the lands as an inheritance. The power turns out to be a rare magical mechanism, of which there are very few on the entire continent. Yuta is amazed by the discovery, which Lorgo was instructed to use only in extreme cases of threat. Jean calls Lorgo a good lord. Lorgo says public safety is the top priority because his father said so. That's okay, but not everyone can do it. He likes it when people speak well of him. He takes his guests into another room. Everyone is asleep when someone knocks on the door and asks the Lord to come out. Lorgo opens the door and sees the villagers who have come to him about a broken water pipe. Lorgo doesn't know what to do with this and tries to justify himself to the villagers, who begin to become indignant. Jean comes to the rescue, whom the locals call a stranger, and ask him not to meddle in what is none of his business. But the guy says he is ready to deal with the problem. The problem that has arisen can be solved with the help of magic mechanisms that develop the ground for the installation of a water supply system. Jean tells him what to do. Yuta is surprised by his friend's knowledge, and he says that the most important tool of a merchant is knowledge. The water supply has been installed and repaired. Lorgo thanks Jean and the guys for their participation. The residents, although pleased with the construction, still ask for a faster response. Jean is outraged that they did not even thank them. When Lorgo tries to settle the conflict, Jean tells him that he is not fit to be a lord. He asks Lorgo to return the lands to the ruler of the country, but he says that his father bequeathed them to him. Jean does not try to insist on his words. The guys thank Lorgo for his hospitality and say goodbye to him. Each gives him their parting words, and Lorgo replies that he will do everything in his power. He waves after the transporter as it flies away. Nanami tells Yuta that she would like to offer Lorgo a place on their team. Yuta replies that he has thought about it, but Lorgo is still a lord. Lorgo joining them. Jean interrupts the discussion and asks to look at the plane where the two machines are located. The mechanic is trying to figure out what's broken. His owner is standing next to him, talking about how there's no one nearby. These lands are run by some idiot, and it'll be very easy to figure him out. Jean stuns the mechanic. Aluna puts a knife in the owner's throat and asks him to share his plans with her. An explosion occurs far from the village. The mechanisms stand side by side. Lorgo, locked in his tattered fur, still stood in battle against the intruders whose machines had invaded the eastern borders of his lands. One of the mechs stated that even with 30 machines in their squad, he was still stubborn. In response, another mech pilot noted that with the two of them, there were essentially 28 of them. The first one gritted his teeth so that they wouldn't quibble over his words. At that moment, one of the mech pilots drew everyone's attention to an unprotected wall. Lorgo, dressed in fur, grabbed his opponent's leg with a swift movement, growling, "Wait! It's too early!" Not expecting such a trick, the opponent was taken aback. In the village, the inhabitants came out of their houses to watch the fight of the furs right next to their walls. An old man with a rake in his hands watched the duel with anxiety. The huge, brave Lorgo, with snot frozen under his nose and tears glistening in his eyes, confessed his helplessness. I can't do much for my people, but this time—" His words were cut off by a blow. The enemy, looking at Lorgo with contempt, hissed, "Shut up, dear, and don't get in the way." Seeing how the mechs pinned down Lorgo and were kicking him, Yuta and her friend decided to go to help. Yuta shouted to the man being beaten that he would come to his aid. In response, the man only called him by name in surprise. Lorgo whined, his voice shaking with despair. He admitted that he had tried to protect his people but had failed. The village old man watched, his gaze softening. Yuta tried to calm Lorgo down, assuring him that he and Nanami were there to help. Yuta still confidently encouraged Lorgo. After all, Lorgo had already repelled their previous attacks, so there was no need to hang your head. Yuta, Lorgo, and Nanami 3 went to fight the uninvited guests. Without flinching before the onslaught, each of them fell upon the enemy, defeating him. The enemy cursed, because who were they anyway to defeat them all at once? A blow followed and hit his body. Yuta finished off the last enemy and sighed with relief, wiping beads of sweat from his forehead. Already outside his furs, Lorgo wanted to express his gratitude to Yuta, but Yuta started the conversation before him. He took a long time to gather his courage, but finally asked. Yuta invited an acquaintance to leave with him in his company. Lorgo hesitated. As the lord of these lands, he did not want to leave his people alone. When the ruler asked why his subjects had abandoned him, he received a stern answer that it was a worthless answer. Lorgo was at a loss and was about to give a short and clear answer, but the villagers interrupted him. The older villagers asked Lorgo to go with his friends. They stood facing each other on the grass, feeling the setting sun warm their faces. The mountains in the distance were silhouettes. Lorgo was twice as tall as the villagers. An old man in a straw hat, with a hoe in his hands, dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, admitted that they were not the best farmers, and were not strong in carpentry, but they could stand up for themselves. A fellow villager with a mustache and a checkered shirt supported the old man's words, adding that he had already fully fulfilled his promise. Lorgo can now walk and live his life. Moved, Lorgo opened his eyes, full of tears, and saw the old man stretching out his hand to him. Yuta watched this heart-touching moment with a smile on his face. From now on, the new guy on the team, Lorgo, turned to face the young man. Lorgo started listing his shortcomings. He's stupid and slow, and he'll only cause trouble. Yuta said not to worry so much. The leader extended his hand and called him friend, calling him to himself. Yuta's face radiated a gentle and cheerful smile. Lorgo, sensually and firmly grasping Yuta's outstretched hand with both hands, said that from now on, he would cease to be the lord and would go over to his team. Around the two of them stood Nanami, Falma, Aluna, and Jean, as well as the mech towering behind Yuta. The very next bright, hot day, Lorgo was writing a renunciation of his lands and his castle. Jean looked at this with annoyance. Lorgo wrote everything down. Jean asked irritably how many sheets of paper he had used. About 10 sheets? No, 41 expensive sheets of paper. That was outrageous. Although this time it will work. Now Lorgo has officially given up his lands. Nanami was happy that Lorgo would be living with them from now on. From now on, they would all be friends forever. Falma suggested that they choose a room that would fit Lorgo's large frame. Aluna summed up that they would move on after handing over the land to the king. The carrier in which they all lived drove on, passing beautiful nature and bridges. When the girl opened her eyes, her gaze was fixed on the ceiling, a labyrinth of pipes stretching in all directions. A girl named Amina, with short, shoulder-length hair, was in a locked cryochamber. She was completely naked, with only a thin bandage wrapped around her waist. As she stepped onto the floor, she thought about only one thing. How did she end up in the capsule? The memory came crashing down on her. The blade of an enemy mech had pierced her machine, dealing a crushing blow to the hull. She feels bad. Her head is still foggy. In any case, she needs to figure out the situation. She went to the nearest door, and when she opened it, she saw a young man who was holding a tray with dirty dishes in his hands. As soon as he saw her, his face turned red with embarrassment, and, muttering something incoherent, he dropped the tray on the floor. The violent reaction of a boy her age caught her off guard. Not understanding the reason, she involuntarily looked at herself. Taken by surprise, the girl let out an embarrassed squeal, full of horror and awkwardness. Jean, who was watching the scene, only dryly commented on the unexpected turn of events, with Yuta and the naked girl. Amina, already dressed, had a hard time digesting what she had heard. The explanations of her opponents seemed absurd. What, had she really not been fighting the mercenaries of the King of Beasts? She refused to believe it, because the defeat was obvious. She had seen it with her own eyes. Yuta insisted that it was different. She had fought desperately against the peerless Knights of Steel. She had been defeated by the golden magic mech, Vajra, even if Yuta was right. She couldn't believe that. There was a child driving that mech. She pointed her finger straight at Nanami, who was eating fried eggs and sausages at the table. Grabbing Amina's hand, Nanami asked for forgiveness in a confused manner, justifying herself with her despair. Amina, looking at her, only thought that she was crazy. Anyway, Amina furiously asked Nanami-san to fight her. Nanami objected that she didn't really like that. Jean does not approve of this duel, because you can't make a single coin from this duel. Amina, understanding Jean's greedy nature, offered a bet of 500,000 gold. In case of their victory, he will receive the same amount. Jean was excited by the mere thought of a large sum of money. He wished Nanami to give her a good thrashing. Yuta and Nanami just stood aside. Aluna and Falma didn't want to lend their magical armor to the stranger, even though she didn't have any armor of her own. Yuta offered to lend his fur to Arleo, but that fur... Without waiting for Yuta's answer, Jean offered the interested Amina to sign a written contract. She signed the paper without thinking. Yuta, standing aside, thought it was a bad idea. This is a white magical fur. She remembered its good maneuverability. Yuta was again not allowed to finish the sentence. Finding themselves in a spacious hangar with rows of mechs, Nanami and Amina headed to their machines. Nanami took a seat in hers, familiar with the controls, and Amina settled into the mech Yuta had borrowed, anticipating the upcoming sparring match where the winner would take all the money. Amina sat down in Yuta's white mecha and noticed that it was quite old. Taking this into account, she tried to activate the mecha, but the machine did not move an inch. The girl started screaming and getting angry, trying to get the mecha going because she wasn't some run-of-the-mill Highlander. She had over 20,000. Jean pointed out the clause in the contract that if activation failed, Nanami would automatically be considered the winner. Yuta tried to say that Arleo couldn't be moved that easily. Nanami could only accept her victory in bewilderment. The girl started screaming and claiming that they were trying to fool her. Just think, they slipped her a non-working fur coat. Then the match is invalid. Did you hear? Well, anyway, Jean started reading out the contract, which stated that the application for the game costs 500,000. The fee for winning is the same as the equipment rental, so in the end, it's 1.5 million. Jean mentally added another 500,000 to the contract in advance. Amina only said that she would not pay them, no matter what they poured on her here. Lorgo went down the stairs, hearing the noise, and approached the rowdy one from behind. Amina was terrified of the giant, who seemed evil and menacing to her. Just a few words spoken to Lorgo were enough to intimidate Emin and squeeze 1 million out of him for the loss. After that, Amina only asked for a ride to the nearest Rudelbank. In the city, she was told that the client had apparently passed away and that his account had been frozen. When she went to the Rudelbank branch, the bank employee asked her where she got the card. She only mumbled something unintelligible to this question. Aluna realized that Amina had been declared dead in her homeland. This meant that trouble was inevitable. And if so, the only way for her to pay off is to work off the debt with her body. The girl opened her mouth to object, but didn't have time. A suitcase was shoved into her hands like a hot potato, drowning out her protests with a squeal. The team, weighed down by suitcases and backpacks, hurried forward. They had to move not only their personal belongings, but also an impressive cargo, 30 magnetic blocks and 3 dozen nanotubes. Amina hesitated, embarrassed. She had never expected that working off the debt with her body would turn into helping in the mercenary trade, working for Jean to pay off the debt. She was at the end of the line, but quickly caught up with the others, carrying a heavy suitcase. Her main goal was to pay off her debt, and she was ready to try for them. Jean confirmed that Emina was now a new member of the Peerless Knights of Steel. And, of course, the most important thing in a mercenary's work is pick a magical fur. Since it will be Emina's car, she will choose the fur from the entire collection of furs offered to her in the store. She was surprised that she was so easily allowed to choose her fur. Jean warned, the more expensive it would be, the more her debt would grow. Emina realized that Jean was nimble. Nanami was eager to get her hands on the mech. Jean, however, objected, saying that he was not buying it for her. Falma liked Nanami's choice. She enthusiastically began to describe all the advantages of Artemis, and then moved on to describing the Warbolt subtype machines. Falma has a strange dialogue topic switch. While Falma was talking non-stop about the various mechs, Emina, after observing them for a while, realized that this group of mercenaries was completely different from what she was used to seeing in the Elysian army. A memory flashed through her mind. She, in her army dress uniform, saluting, surrounded by hundreds of lined-up soldiers. There was not a single emotion in her gaze then. Now, unlike before, she stood calmly, watching Jean and Yuta converse in a friendly manner. Especially this guy named Yuta reminds her a lot of Yui. Smiling at her thoughts, she suddenly decided to stay here with them for a while. Yuta, shocked by what he heard, loudly asked Jean again. The amount that Emina is able to pay off per day is 500 gold? Jean hurried to calm Yuta down because Emina was nearby. If you estimate, the rent for fur, food, and accommodation is 500 gold, with a daily allowance of 10,000. Yute even felt sorry for Emin. Jean realized that Highlanders over the 20,000 mark don't just lie around on the road. Well, to say that Emina is not worried at all would of course be a lie. After finishing moving the things, Lisa pointed out to Emine that the armor she had bought made of magical fur was too specific. She admitted that she did not know what to do with it. Emine could only apologize. By the way, if you think about it, Aluna wouldn't mind the new weaponry. Nanami got tired and suggested going for a swim. Jean only complained to their statements that they were expensive workers. Jean accepted Nanami's offer to go swimming, since he still wanted to go somewhere, since they had all come to this city. At night they came to the threshold of the spa. The wooden building was crowned with a tiled roof. Lanterns lit the path to the entrance, and around it, framing the grass, lay a stone slab. Jean addressed the entire group, which included Yuta, Aluna, Nanami, Lisa, Emina, and Lorgo. The only one who had not joined them was Falma, due to her appearance. He introduced Oedo Spa, which he had always wanted to visit at least once. There are all kinds of baths and massages, and in addition, there is also a sauna. First-class deep healing. The wind played with the leaves in front of the beautiful spa. Soon, the company entered. Yuta realized that this was a sanatorium. As expected from Earthlings, they were in the know! By the way, they say that the owner of this establishment is also from Earth. The sauna worker explained that the men's changing room was on the left, the women's on the right. The mixed baths came as a complete surprise to Yuta. The mere thought of how he would end up in a communal bath with charming girls, covered only by towels, made the young man blush deeply. But the young man immediately calmed down when he saw the girls in bathing suits entering the baths. Jean only asked Yuta what he expected to see. Yuta sank into the water and sat down, covering his head with a towel. He relaxed. The tension that had been building up inside him began to dissipate like smoke. Just as Yuta was enjoying the long-awaited peace, he was interrupted by a stream of water. The girl in the bathing suit, without ceremony, said that he was bothering her. The blue-eyed blonde informed Yuta that she was going to enter now, so he needed to get out of the water. Behind the girl stood a young man with shoulder-length hair, who followed his mistress. The unexpected turn of events made Yuta feel uneasy, his face twisted into a strange grimace, betraying his confusion. Throwing the towel off his head, Yuta turned to her with an angry question. "Who the hell are you? There's plenty of room here. Why should I get out?" The girl flushed with indignation. The thought of sharing water with a stranger seemed offensive to her. She regarded his words as deliberate mockery. Yuta wasn't going anywhere, that was obvious. Realizing this, the girl snapped her fingers and turned to her companion, Arthur. He, instantly understanding her hint, hurried to fulfill her request. Before Yuta could react, Arthur grabbed his arm. "This is Mrs. Lene Carlo's place," Arthur snapped, not giving Yuta a chance to object. So get out of here, or else! Arthur's gaze moved to Aluna's attacking foot, demanding, "What are you doing to my Yuta?" She kicked Arthur right in the face, sending him flying across the pool. Looking at her assistant's face, the girl angrily attacked the attackers. "Hey, what are you doing? How dare you hit that well-groomed face, the source of his pride in front of other people? And if it gets ruined, does that mean Arthur will lose his key advantage?" Aluna only snorted contemptuously, demonstrating complete indifference. Seeing Arthur's wounded, disfigured face, hearing him pronounce her name, she understood. Everything beautiful in him had just faded away. Line Carlo's patience snapped. She challenged the two to a duel. In response, they merely swayed lazily on the waves, not paying the slightest attention to her. The blonde suggested a competition to see who could last longer in the sauna. Everyone would enter at the same time, and the team that lasted longer would win. The loser would do whatever the winner demanded. Aluna and Yuta agreed to the competition. If they lose, Aluna will make Line Carlo dance naked. The blonde herself has not yet decided how to bring them down to earth. Let the games begin! It's even hotter here than Line expected. The perfect place for serious competition. Yuta suggested that Aluna sit in that place, because the heat there is not so strong. Aluna agreed. Yuta and Aluna sat down below, closer to the stove. Well, it seems the blonde believes that base personalities express themselves eloquently in their actions. 5 minutes later, the blue-eyed blonde was at the limit of heat. She relied on Arthur for the rest. Arthur thought he could be counted on. Aluna noticed that it was indeed not easy. Yuta wished not to overdo it. They could hold out a little longer. Yuta turned to Arthur, wishing him not to evaporate, but Arthur lost consciousness from overheating. His condition was so severe that he looked like he was dead. The medics, providing first aid, quickly took him out on a gurney. Line Carlo quickly announced a 3-stage match. The next one was breath-holding. She was trying to delay her loss. In Yuta and Aluna's minds, there was only one thought: to finish this as soon as possible, because they were tired. Arthur, despite his miserable state, crawled to his mistress. Since he was alive, then it was worth starting the competition. Arthur was like a demon. 20 seconds passed. Line was tired, leaving everything to Arthur. Judah and Aluna pointed at Arthur, who was face down in the water. He was taken away by medics on a gurney for the second time. The blonde changed the rules again, announcing 3 more rounds and points. In the 3rd round, the points are tripled. This one, realizing that she would not fall behind, suggested that she independently choose something that she was really good at as a competition. Line Carlo asked Yuta with a smile on her face, "Did you just say that you wanted to compete in something I'm really good at?" Her cheeky smile slightly alarmed the young man. What the young lady handles best is the magic bellows. So they came with their bellows during the day. First of all, Line Carlo wants to praise her rivals for not running away with their tails between their legs. Arthur, having fully recovered, is ready to serve his mistress. All members of the group came to the meeting. In this case, the 2 strongest pilots will fight against them. This is the proposal put forward by the blonde. The entire team stood near their carrier on the ground, while the castle was visible in the distance. While Yuta and Falma were perplexed, Aluna noticed Line Carlo had the very famous magical fur, Odin. Could it be that she, one of the dozen excellent ones, Emperor of Thunder Line Carlo? Smiling, the girl in a brown knee-length skirt, shirt, and short yellow jacket looked at them. The yellow headband on her bangs added lightness to the image. Next to her, her servant Arthur stood with his head bowed, dressed in a classic suit. Well, now that they know that Line Carlo is the Thunder Emperor, she and no one else will judge them if they decide to run away. The young man assured that he would not run away, since he himself proposed this competition. Therefore, Yuta and Nanami will fight, since she is the best after Yuta. Jean warned his friends, "Do you even see the person you're talking to? That's Line Carlo, the Thunder Emperor, isn't it?" Yuta asked indifferently. "Is she some big shot known all over the world?" Jean nodded, confirming his guess. "Well, it's time to choose an opponent for the night. Arthur's apprentice, the Centaur pilot, 14-year-old Nanami, will fight against Arthur. She will definitely smash him to smithereens." 2 huge mechs stood opposite each other. Jean asked on the microphone if everyone was ready. Since they didn't have many hands here, Jean would be broadcasting from the carrier. The game would last until 2 wins. He loudly announced the start of the match. Nanami's mech took a defensive stance. and Arthur's mech centaur walked towards her on its 4 legs. A sudden scream escaped Nanami, but she did not move. Falma, realizing the danger, hurried to warn. The centaur's offensive power exceeds 30,000. Kitoris' sword slammed hard into Nanami's small shield. It remained in place. Magic Fur Centaur didn't expect that the little girl inside the fur would be able to resist his charge. Even the somewhat impudent blonde can't believe that Nanami managed to block the centaur's dash the first time. Is it possible that she is also beyond the 30,000 limit? But will she be able to block the second attack? Arthur used the dash on his opponent for the second time. Nanami decided not to run away against the rush, staying in the same place. Arthur did not expect such a turn. Falma could only shout to her that it was dangerous. Arthur's sword froze dangerously close to the head of Nanami's machine. Paralyzed with fear, she tried to counterattack, dodging him. Nanami launched a crushing blow at the centaur's front legs, shattering them. The centaur moved a short distance away from Nanami's fur, revealing his front legs to be damaged. Jean has declared the end of this great match. The winner is Nanami. With contempt in her voice, Line Carlo, standing over the kneeling Arthur, scolded him as if he were a boy, repeating that in that case he was not fit to be her knight. Arthur could only ask for forgiveness from her. Not far from them stood Yuta and Nanami. The blonde turned her head to the two of them to say that she was going to deal with you two on her own anyway. She will show them why they call her the Emperor of Thunder. Jean's question comes from the microphone. So, are you ready? The mechs Nanami and Line Carlo stand opposite each other. The blonde replied that of course she was. She could finish this in literally a minute, so it was time to begin. Nanami caught her attention on the phrase, literally in a minute, questioning the statement. Jean immediately announced the start of the round. Nanami moved from the ground, attacking the Thunder Emperor. She only noted that Nanami liked to brag. Falma warned Nanami that, according to rumors, Odin Line Carlo has an unpredictable long-range attack. She, in turn, immediately put this attack into practice. The unpredictable long-range beam burned through the mech's arms, causing it to drop its shield and fall back, creating a cloud of smoke and dust over the ground. Seeing this, Line Carlo wondered, had she overdone it? Suddenly, through the curtain of smoke and dust, Nanami's car burst forth, rushing straight towards the Thunder Emperor. The blue-eyed blonde, not expecting her sudden appearance, screamed. Nanami asks Line Carlo, "So how do you like this reception? When you were overtaken so that you could not even distinguish, huh?" She admitted that she turned out to be smart and should not be underestimated, because of the appearance of a cute child. Odin's hand grabbed Majura's hand. She threatened that she herself, one of the dozen preeminent, should not be underestimated. How is that possible? Majura was losing strength. It had been a long time since the Thunder Emperor had been forced to use this technique, so she could enjoy it to her heart's content. Grabbing her arm, she aimed her unexpected long-range attack straight at Majura's head. Falma, Aluna, and Jean froze in mute shock at what they saw. A single swing of the blade decided the outcome of the battle. Major's magical mech fell to its knees, headless and defeated. Alarmed, Nanami gasped for air, and the bitter realization of defeat washed over her. The Thunder Emperor's voice rolled like thunder. So how does it feel? Jean realized the power at the disposal of a dozen superiors. Line Carlo confidently assumed that victory was certainly hers, since she had defeated Odin's major mech. Well, now it's Yuta's turn. The thought crossed the young man's mind that an unpredictable long-range attack was certainly a formidable weapon. But the shield Nanami used was not damaged, so it was just a shockwave, or was it an impact that affected parts of the mechanisms? Yuta asked Nanami for her sword and shield. She gave him her sword and shield without hesitation. He should give her a good beating for her. Jean announced what would happen next, the final round. Although, to be honest, Jean almost forgot that this was actually a competition. There was already a loser on both sides. So this was the decisive battle. Yuta thought that if his guess was correct, then as long as the shield was up, he had a chance to prevent her attack. The blonde asked cheekily, "So how do you think you can resist me? The match has begun!" The magical mech Odin instantly launched his surprise long-range attack towards Arleo. Yuta withstood such a powerful blow from Nanami's shield, but what will happen if it comes to close combat? Before the unexpected long-range attack had time to die down, the magical mech Odin was back in position to fire. Was she really going to? The Thunder Emperor's smile betrayed her confidence. Yuta must have decided that she wouldn't repeat the same attack several times in a row. Oh shit! The magical mech Odin fired his long-range attack again, straight at Arleo. Yuta tried to block the beam, but the shield began to crumble under the pressure. Yuta's snow-white car approached Lina Carlo's dark fur. The young man declared that, although he had lost his shield, he had managed to get very close to her. The blonde exclaimed, "Come on! I didn't think that anyone would ever manage to get her to this point again. Then I will show you the full power of my Odin." Magical Fur Odin put all his strength into a blow with his staff, bringing down the storm on the ground. An abyss opened up under his feet, riddled with a network of cracks, reminiscent of the aftermath of a powerful earthquake or the fall of a celestial body. Questions flashed through Yuta's mind. A mid-range attack? But how is that possible? Lina Carlo froze. The spectators, who had been watching the battle with fascination, burst into deafening screams. Lisa, with annoyance in her voice, exclaimed, "Oh no!" when she saw that she had gotten it. John, indignant, asked, "Well, who's going to fix it now?" Only Aluna noticed, and drew everyone's attention to. Yuta concentrates the Ludia. A noticeable wave of energy emanated from the fur. Lina Carlo thought this picture was a bluff, because he can't turn a blind eye to the damage he's received, can he? She still hopes to turn the situation in her favor. Arleo ran with Nanami's sword right up to Odin. He still intends to advance further. Odin used Storm for the second time. Yuta's fur crashed into Lina Carlo's fur. She responded with a furious storm. How will this clash of titans end? The blonde's mouth fell silently open. Disbelief splashed in her eyes. Storm didn't work on Arleo. How is that possible? Arleo's sword blade almost touched the target. Impossible! The Thunder Emperor, one of the dozen Transcendents, could not accept the thought of defeat. The sword flashed, and Odin's head was severed from his shoulders with a single swing. Arleo crouched to the ground, watching as Odin's headless body froze in place. The atmosphere outside was peaceful. Light clouds floated slowly across the sky, and the mountains and trees seemed to breathe peace. The carrier, as if part of the landscape, stood motionless in its place. Everyone congratulated and praised the winner, Yuta. Jean exclaimed, "Great job!" Aluna admitted that she expected such success from her beloved man. Amina asked curiously what exactly he did in the end. Yuta seemed not to understand what was being talked about and what was so special about him. "Just tell me, what the hell was that?" Amina looked at Yuta demandingly, waiting for an explanation. At that moment, Lina Carlo, with a slight smile, called Yuta to her. He was about to answer when suddenly, "Arthur," the servant reminded, as if pulling the name from the depths of Yuta's memory. "Oh, right, Arthur." Lina Carlo, with an embarrassed look on her face, said, "How could you stand up to me? You did quite well." She started making excuses that she could have fought better, but since their team stopped the match, she was declaring a draw this time. Yuta agreed, just so that it would finally be over. However, it was amazing that Yuta was able to deal with her, so she decided to propose. Hire them to work. Jean, perplexed, asked why she would hire anyone at all, given her prowess. Lina Carlo was surprised to find that they were unaware of the existence of her other side, other than the Thunder Emperor. Her full name is Lina Carlo Dadenberg II, the third princess of the Meltaria Kingdom and former commander of the Magical Mech Military Corps. According to rumors, the losses of the neighboring empire of Durakia after the war with them are counted in the hundreds. After those events, she began to instill fear in people, and she was called the God of Destruction. This is all that Aluna knows. So Jean realized that the third princess couldn't speak in the middle of the city, so what did she want? Lina Carlo replies that the king of Meltaria is currently in critical condition, making the situation in the kingdom unstable. She is 9th in line to the throne, but has no intention of claiming it. In any case, the choice will be made between the top 5 heirs. But the first Prince Mashim is simply a demon in the flesh. And if he comes to power, then the country will end. The succession council was coming up soon. Lina Carlo wanted to introduce the mercenaries she had hired when they arrived. Juta wondered if they should do that. The princess said with hope in her voice, "Of course, I want you to become a new spark for the royal family." Yuta, Aluna, and Jean froze, considering her words. Finally, Jean said, "She's something." Leaving behind the streets where modest but well-kept two-story wooden houses stood, what appeared before their eyes was a huge royal castle, with its high walls dotted with windows and many towers lost in the sky. Princess Linne Carlo led our heroes to the door leading to the royal family's meeting room, known as the Round Table. Yuta sensed something was wrong and was wary of the surroundings. The princess opened the door and a room opened up before them with a massive table, in the center of which was a compartment for greenery. At the table sat members of the royal family and high-ranking politicians close to the court. The king's throne remained empty, and behind it fluttered the flags of the kingdom. One influential politician drew the attention of Princess Linne Carlo to the fact that access to the sacred hall of the Round Table was limited to members of the royal family. She merely retorted by saying that these were mercenaries hired by her and asked him not to be rude. Prince Builder reminded his sister Linne Carlo of the law. No heir to the throne should have military forces at his disposal. Was Linne really going to break this rule? In response, she explained that she was accompanied by only 10 mercenaries, hired exclusively to accompany her to the upcoming negotiations. Crown Prince Mushim quickly ended the conversation, calling what had happened an innocent joke by their younger sister. Builder wanted to object to his brother. The name Mushim sounded like a thunderclap. The protagonist's memory of Linne Carlo's warning surfaced. He is like a demon in the flesh. The Crown Prince, with his stern, almost severe face, his hair slicked back and revealing a high forehead, and his jacket richly embroidered with patterns and discreetly decorated with a plate with decoration, immediately gave away his identity as Mushim. Mushim reassured his brother, who was sitting next to him, that they were just mercenaries and there was nothing to worry about. Builder agreed, because the real danger came from her. Prince Builder let it slip that they had 2,000 magical mechs in their employ. So despite all its advantages, Linne Carlo approached her 2 older brothers, saying that she must have heard them wrong. She repeated Builder's words word for word, with a smile on her face. "You now have 2,000 magical mechs at your disposal." Finally, approaching her agitated brother, she said, "Could it be that this is about my successor as commander, Kruse? Or is there some connection with the rumor that he is the one with whom you while away your nights, brother Mushim?" Mushim, having exhausted his patience, jumped up and shouted at Linne Carlo, calling her a piece of trash. Juta stood between Mushim and Linne Carlo, blocking her from him. Another prince stood up and asked everyone to calm down, explaining that they were in a sacred place. Silence fell between Linne Carlo and Mushim like a thick curtain. Yuta felt the tension in the air. Now they decided to proceed to the main topic of the meeting, namely, the candidates for succession to the throne. Thoughts flashed through the mercenary's head that this was very similar to internal aristocratic family squabbles. It immediately felt like he had ended up on the pages of a history textbook. The third princess wondered what was the point of further discussions, since the king had already chosen an heir. The crown prince is Yuden. She thinks he is perfect for the role. Mushim's voice rang out, declaring not to make him laugh, because he is the crown prince. Mushim declared that the king made this choice in a hospital bed and while delirious, so it is hard to believe that he was capable of making a sound, balanced decision. Linne Carlo, latching onto her brother's words, decided that he meant that when you lie sick in bed, you lose your vaunted insight. In response, Mushim advised her not to get carried away too much, even if her Ludia value was somewhat high. This is no reason for arrogance. Mushim's look, full of hidden meaning, forced the Prime Minister to move on to the key issue. The Prime Minister, yielding to unspoken pressure, initiated a vote on the issue of the heir to the throne. Linne Carlo protested, rising from her chair. "The king's will is unbreakable. The crown prince must inherit the throne." Prince Mushim has noticed that Linne Carlo is behaving in an extremely bad manner. He agrees to hold a vote. Prince Builder is also not against holding a vote. The Prime Minister asked those gathered to support the vote by raising their hands. Almost all hands shot up. Only Prince Yuden, with his eyes closed, remained silent. Next to him, Princess Linne Carlo was silent, but there was aggression in that silence. The Prime Minister announced that the motion had been approved by a majority vote. In that case, the resolution would be passed in 5 days. It would include 5 dukes and 4 adult members of the royal family, in addition to representatives of the interested parties. Yuta noticed his employer slam the table angrily. The third princess of Meltaria, Linne Carlo, showed a surge of barely suppressed anger on her face for disobeying the will of the king. Linne Carlo, having made sure that there were no strangers, gathered everyone in a secluded house. There she announced that this was exactly what she had expected. At this rate, Mushim would become king. Yuta reminded him of the upcoming vote. Jean sharply objected, noting that in votes involving high-ranking government officials, the outcome is usually predetermined. The blonde confirmed Jean's thought. Mushim's influence secures him the support of the following key figures: Second Prince Balder, Second Princess Lindil, Prime Minister Blur, Mushim's father-in-law Duke Caron, and Duke Holmer, who has business connections with him. Yuta counted on his fingers only 5 people supporting Mushim, out of 10 who would participate in the vote. Jean knew that they had already decided everything and just wanted to hide behind this vote. Aluna asked, "Does anyone have any ideas?" Frankly speaking, Linne Carlo thought that at this point in the game, the only ones who would vote for Yudin were herself and First Princess Rilia. However, Duke Riedmart and Belerma are not too fond of Mushim, so in theory, it wouldn't be hard to convince them. The problem is one decisive vote. Yuta suggested to convince the second prince, or princess. The third princess knows that it won't work, it's hard to even imagine, since they think in the same way as him, so they need to target Duke Homel. If they are only bound by commercial interests, then they have something to negotiate on. Yuta asked, and why? First of all, Linne Carlo gave our mercenaries 100 million as an advance payment and compensation for the repair of damaged mechs. The rest would be paid upon completion of the task. Jean was glad that she was not paying in advance. She only stated that she did not go back on her word. It flashed through Yutu's mind that at first she often went back on her word. Yudin asked to be introduced to the guests. His sister introduced him. "This is my younger brother, Yudin." "Pleased to meet you," he said. Yuta introduced himself and his companions, Jean and Aluna. Jean, counting the money, asked, "Is this Yudin's money?" Jean asked if she had money, to which she waved him off, explaining that Yudin had simply covered for her this time. Jean, burning with impatience, pressed Lino Carlo, demanding an explanation. How was she going to pay them in full? Linne assured that she would pay the bill as soon as she received her share, due to her as a member of the royal family. Yudin supported her, adding that she had good reasons for this. The problem is with the families of soldiers killed in action. She pays them an allowance every year. That's why she never has enough of her own. Linne Carlo assured that this goes without saying. After all, they fought for the royal family. Looking after the rest of their families and helping them is the least we can do for taking their loved ones into battle. She considers it her duty. It seemed that Yuta had jumped to conclusions about her. Aluna suggested that they postpone the negotiations about money and discuss ways to win Duke Homel over to their side. The princess tells us that currently numerous bands of marauders are running rampant within the Duchy of Homel, and the damage to property is estimated at 30 billion gold. These bandits are also former warriors of the now-destroyed Stuttgart, and they seem to be quite strong. So Linne plans to get his vote in exchange for settling this issue. Jean realized that she wanted their group to deal with these guys. The blonde suggested that they take Arthur with them. Arthur was dumbfounded and asked, why should they take him with them? The princess replied that it was unfair to send them to a completely unfamiliar place alone, and besides, he would be of no use here, so now was actually a free time. Once in the ferry, the crew said goodbye to the third princess. She had high hopes for them. Jean gave her some advice, asking her not to miss the opportunity to convince the 2 dukes. The princess assured him that he need not worry. Jean entered the transporter and saw Arthur, dejected and sitting on the floor. He noticed how much Arthur had changed since Linne Carlo was no longer around. When Jean asked Arthur to leave him alone, he only replied that he felt helpless without his mistress. Jean saw how he was trying his best for her. He knew that if he continued to act so depressed, he would not get her approval. Yuta asked Arthur about his social status. Arthur replied that he and his mistress had a strong bond. Arthur stood up abruptly and rattled off that he was the second son of Count Rickelmer, had graduated from the Knight Academy, and was the best in his class, and was now a knight apprentice to the beautiful, charming, and refined Lady Lina Carlo. Juta was surprised by his status as an apprentice, because he was already a full-fledged knight. Arthur did not consider himself a knight, since his mistress did not recognize him as such. Yuta, entering the workshop, turned to Lisa, who looked exhausted by the work. It must be hard to constantly do repairs alone. She agreed, but emphasized the urgent need to hire an auxiliary mechanic. She was irritated that all this work was constantly dumped on her, without any thought to how she was having to cope. Now that she mentioned it, he asked her directly, "What makes Arlio so strong?" "How should I know?" she replied, sweat pouring down her face. To Yuta's surprise, she started talking about how he should understand this himself, because the connection with the magical fur is a kind of deal. Yuta agreed, but "I didn't understand what determines the specificity and potential of the mech." Lisa began the lecture, in which she said that first of all, the power of the luteum core. On the other hand, the innate elemental elements also have an effect, although 90% is still determined by the core of lutea, and yet, neither the structure nor the principles of interaction of all components are fully known to anyone. Everyone uses them simply because they understand how. The higher the quality of the core, the better the machine's performance matches the pilot's lutea value. It seems so, but it is in fact. Lisa came to the conclusion that Arlio was clearly not a masterpiece, with its requirements for at least launching. And if you think about it, maybe it wasn't about him at all. Yuta was perplexed. "And in your abnormally high level of lutea?" This one tensed up from such assumptions. In the Erisha Empire, in her room, Shirayuki Yui, broken by the grief of losing Emina, sat motionless at her desk. She still can't quite accept it. The unrivaled Knights of Steel killed her. A knock on the door made her break away from her thoughts. With a monocle in his eye, the middle-aged man approached Lady Yui with important news. The Emperor was waiting for her in the audience hall. The conversation turned to her friend she had mentioned earlier, who had been sold to a merchant. He had new information about him. Yui asked, "Have you found him?" He refused. All he knew was that the boy had joined a small country called Rudwan, where he had some trouble with the military. Yui asked excitedly, "Was everything resolved well?" "The details are still unknown. They have sent special forces there at the moment, so we will have to wait a little while longer." Yui suddenly clearly remembered their first meeting with Yuta, and a longing for him pierced her sharply. How she missed him now. I wonder if this pain in my chest will subside even a little. The memory of Yuta's radiant smile floated into her mind. All that was left for the old man to do was quietly lead Mrs. Yui to the meeting place. In the audience hall, the Emperor, seated on his throne, remarked that he was aware of her recent depression caused by Emina. He asked, "Have you managed to cope with it at least a little?" Yui is deeply touched by His Majesty's concern, but she cannot say that she has recovered yet. The Emperor asked not to force himself to overpower Yui. He found some interesting documents in the old archives, which said that the shrine tomb of the legendary great sage is located deep in the Devil's Forest. The Emperor plans to send a research team there to verify the authenticity of this information. The Emperor invites Yui to join them. The name of the supreme sage is Rafshal, and rumor has it that he is the creator of the first combat mech. Yui can't just sit locked in her room all day long. Surely a change of scenery would do the sad Yui some good. Yui agreed with the Emperor, because sitting in her room she gives in to heavy thoughts, so she really wanted to join the expedition. The Emperor was pleased and said that he had ordered the preparations, but he would discuss further details with others. An old man with a monocle thanks Yui for agreeing to take part in the expedition to the shrine. Yui asks her not to thank her, because it will be good for her too. It will distract her. The expedition currently consists of 3 scientists, 2 high scorers with 20,000 plus ratings, dozens of 10,000ers from various countries, 20 mechanics, and 50 soldiers for security. Yui noted that the expedition's scope was quite impressive. The old man says that thousands of giant beasts used to run rampant in that area, so it would have been extremely difficult for a small group of people to do so. Although, of course, all these animals have long since died out. The old man turned and looked straight at the aforementioned Yui. After some time, Yui met Mary from the USA and Enrique. The old man told Yui that these two were the same participants he had spoken of earlier, Highlanders with stats over 20,000. Yui was pleased to meet them and hoped to work together. In her mind, Yui apologized to Amina. Yui won't be able to recover if she doesn't do something now. It's time to depart. Ladies and gentlemen are asked to come aboard. Yui whispers the name of the crew. Unrivaled Knights of Steel. Be that as it may, sooner or later, they will certainly come face to face. The Homel Duchy in the Meltaria Kingdom welcomed Arthur, Jean, Yuta, and Aluna with the luxury of their estate. There, they were personally met by Duke Homel, to whom they were to deliver an important message from Her Highness Lena Carlo. Knight Arthur, with a courteous bow, presented Duke Homel with a personal letter from the princess, expecting his attention to the letter. Duke Homel was surprised, because he didn't even know what this poor princess could offer him. Arthur, still playing the role of Lene Carlo's personal knight, almost lost his temper and swung at the Duke, who dared to call the princess beggar. However, Aluna managed to stop him. Homel, having finished reading the letter, asked again, "So you will deal with the bandits in my domain in exchange for my vote for Yudin's accession to the throne? Sounds intriguing. Well, that's quite a bold proposal. Could this brainless beggar really have thought of such a thing? Okay, I agree." Arthur tried to swing at the Duke again, but Aluna stopped him again. Jean realized how bad the guy was at controlling his emotions. Already in the city center, Aluna suggested that the whole team split up and look for information about these marauders. Jean specified that the goal was to find out where the marauders were hiding. They would need to meet here when the evening bell rang. Everyone accepted this proposal. So why is Amina paired with Yuta? Yuta replied that they needed to be distributed evenly and felt awkward in the atmosphere between the two of them. The young man asked the girl if she was used to it. She answered positively. There was silence. The young man asked Amina again about her hobbies. Amina said that he did not have to force himself to talk to her. Yuta understood. Walking along the street with shops, Amina said one word to Yuta: shopping. Yuta didn't even hear her at first. Amina explained that shopping was the answer to his question about her hobbies. Realizing this, Yuta invited her to go shopping with him. When asked about the appropriateness of shopping, Yuta assured her that it was quite appropriate. Amina looked at the clothes in the store, trying things on herself, but she was unpleasantly surprised by the high prices, even for the most basic models. Meanwhile, the seller persistently offered Yuta a vase, which he stubbornly refused. The seller offered Yuta a vase, describing its merits, but Yuta showed no interest in buying it. To distract the seller, Yuta asked if he had heard about the marauders who had been ravaging the area lately. Hearing the question, the seller stopped insisting on buying the vase. Since that was the case, the shopkeeper advised them to go home. Yuta tried to ask the shopkeeper again, but he insistently asked them to leave his shop. Sitting together under the scorching sun on opposite sides of the bench, Yuta reasoned that they had already questioned 10 people about the marauders, but no one had told them anything. Amina noted that most likely they simply did not want to talk, although it seemed they knew something. The young man thought it strange, because shouldn't the activities of these robbers cause problems for the locals? Suddenly a stranger approaches them, asking, "Are you sniffing around here about the robbers?" 2 muscular men approach them, saying that they have something to tell. Amina notices a dagger on one of the men. Amina, smiling, agrees to go with them, because she wants to hear what they have to say. They walk to a dark alley, littered with trash and empty bottles of alcohol. One of the men suggests that they are conducting their own investigation into these bandits. 2 men pulled out knives, blocking the hero's path. One of them, in a t-shirt and with blonde hair, shouted, "But we will not let you succeed too much in this, since we owe them a lot." Amina rushed at the man. Grabbing his wrist, she delivered a sharp blow to his knee. She quickly twisted his arm behind his back, snatched the knife from his hand, and pinned him to the wall with a blow to his collarbone. The second man froze, clutching the knife in his hand, and shouted at her. "Don't move," she hissed, pressing the blade of the knife to his friend's neck. The man and Yuta froze, paralyzed with horror at what they saw. Amina commanded the man to lower the knife and push it toward Yuta. He complied, visibly agitated. Yuta, though shocked, understood that Amina's military past was making itself felt. She turned to the man pinned against the wall. "Are you part of the band of raiders? He replied, "No." To her next question, "Then what do you owe them?" He explained that the raiders took food and money from the nobility, who stifled them with exorbitant taxes and shared it with the poor. To Amina's question, "When do they come and where do they go then?" the man answered that he did not know. He added that they appear suddenly and disappear just as suddenly. To the question, "Where exactly?" the man answered that he did not know the exact location, but presumably in the area of Mount Dena. She asked them what else they knew. They said they knew nothing else. Resigned, she let them go. The two men ran as fast as they could away from her. Yuta was amazed. She had dealt with them in the blink of an eye. She only noted that they had not learned anything special and suggested that they return to the task. They wandered around for a while, trying to find out about the marauders from passers-by. Yuta was mostly the one asking questions, and Amina was just standing nearby. The young man suddenly noticed there was a hairpin on the shop window, exactly like Yui's. Suddenly he blurted out, "Listen, Amina, do you like anyone?" Amina, clearly embarrassed, did not immediately understand. "What?" She blurted out in embarrassment, "Why are you asking such a thing so suddenly?" Yuta calmly replied that he had a girlfriend he was in love with, although she didn't know her. Now Yuta is separated from her, and he doesn't even know where she might be. He never got a chance to tell her about his feelings, so maybe she doesn't think about him at all anymore. Yeah, maybe he should have confessed to her earlier. The bell strikes the evening hour. This means it is time to meet the others. Yuta apologizes for the conversation he just had with her and suggests that she go to the right place. Amina thinks, "What hopelessness," and calls Yuta by name. Amina was sure he would definitely meet this girl again, and then he would definitely confess to her. Yuta agreed and gave her his word that it would be so. Yuta asked how it went. Arthur said they had asked quite a few people, but it seemed like people just didn't want to talk about it. It was the same with Aluna. The locals are somehow too taciturn when it comes to these free bandits. Besides, it seems that in their eyes they are more like big scoundrels than bandits. Yuta knew it, and Jean probably didn't find out anything special either. Jean came and asked, "Why do you suddenly have such a low opinion of me?" Jean and Lorgo have gotten quite a bit of information, both about the location of their lair, their total numbers, and their leader. It's amazing. And how did they manage to get the locals to talk? Jean pointed his thumb at Lorgo. It was all thanks to him, even though he had done nothing. Lorgo, being gigantic and scary in appearance, simply pounded his fists behind Jean's back. Aluna, Yuta, and Amina immediately understood what was going on. It was pretty mean, because Lorgo himself looked like a bandit. Judging by the overall picture, the raiders' hideout is located in a cave at the foot of Mount Den. They are armed with about 30 magical mechs, and at the head of a certain brave man nicknamed the Lion King. He always wears a lion mask, hiding his face. It is not difficult for Jean to guess the reasons why a bad guy needs to hide his face. Jean believed that his name was well known in this country. Hearing this, Yuta realized that this could cause them problems. Jean, however, countered that this was just a guess, and reminded them of the planned night raid for today. At night, near the third rise of Mount Dena, Jean informed everyone that the transporter will remain there. Lorgo and Falma will remain on guard, just in case. Well, everyone else is to move out, except for Wajura, in the force of repairs. Jean gave the order to begin the cleanup operation. The rest of the group agreed, eager to get started. However, Arthur broke the silence by shouting the name of Lady Lena Carlo. Jean, afraid of attracting attention, ordered him to be silent, reminding him of the need to remain discreet. Yuta asked Amina about her new mech, Artemis. Amina was grateful for the new mech, as it was easy to pilot even without much experience. Aluna reminded her that it was actually her own, just borrowed. By the way, Yuta became interested in asking Amina what Lisa meant when she said that your mech's armor was too special. Amina wanted to answer, but she was interrupted by a warning to stop. Two huge firs towered at the entrance to the lair, under the root of a majestic tree, vigilantly guarding it from unexpected visitors. Aluna spotted two lookouts. "Can't we deal with them quickly?" she asked. Yuta shook his head. "No. If we're going to do a full-on manhunt, it's too early to show off." Then Amina suggested, "Then leave it to me. Let me show off Artemis in all his glory." Amina, while inside Artemis, activated the blackout, making it almost invisible to prying eyes. Yuta was amazed. That was the special thing about this fur. Aluna thought it was good, because in the dark it was practically invisible. Suddenly, from an invisible ambush, a hail of powerful arrows fell on one of the sentries. Having pierced the armor and the body of the mech, they caught him off guard. He did not even have time to react. The second guard was taken by surprise. The mech appeared out of nowhere and its foot instantly pierced the guard's head. This sentry only had time to understand that it was an invisible enemy. This enemy, in the form of Artemis, was already towering over him in full height. Yuta and Aluna, hiding behind the bushes in their furs, watched the events closely. Yuta noticed that the enemy was not expecting an attack at all. Aluna, having assessed the situation, assumed that the raid should go without any problems. The entrance was left completely unprotected. There was chaos in the heart of the lion's den. The Lion King's subjects were scurrying back and forth past his throne, full of anxiety. "We've lost contact with the lookouts," one shouted. "Someone check out what's going on," another responded. "I heard there were some suspicious characters snooping around town today, sniffing around about us." A worried voice sounded. "Why are we only hearing about this now?" someone else complained. The air was tense, and the Lion King uttered only one sentence. "Everyone to arms!" The bandits, seized by panic, rushed about in search of an exit. Their hopes for salvation were dashed when the door shattered into pieces with a crash, broken by the monstrous leg of the combat robot. Aluna ordered Yuta to ignore the infantry, emphasizing that the main goal was to destroy the enemy's mechs. Yuta, understanding the task, decided to attack from the center, while Aluna was to go around the flank. Yuta and Aluna rushed deeper into the lair. Even the seasoned men were frightened by the enemy's sudden invasion of their fortress. Arleo, with a furious roar, pierced one of the mechs with his weapon and, using it as a battering ram, threw it into the thick of the combat robots. Arthur rushed past Arleo on his centaur, crushing his enemies with a crushing ram. Emina, inside Artemis, was destroying several mechs at once. "Who the hell are they?" a frightened question sounded. "They are insanely strong." Another mech turned to the leader. "What are we going to do?" 3 mechs piloted by Yuta, Aluna, and Emina lined up in front of the Lion King's mech and his entourage, who were sitting in combat robots. The Lion King asked them directly, "Are you part of Duke Hommel's personal forces?" Yuta replied that they were not one of them. They were simply mercenaries hired to deal with them in exchange for the Duke's services. The leader was surprised by the mercenaries. The Lion King, with a doubtful voice, asked, "Does this mean that we have room for negotiations?" Yuta, standing in front of Aluna, insisted on the need for them to be held, believing that the result could justify the effort. Aluna apologized to them, citing that she would not negotiate with the raiders. The Lion King warned that, in that case, he would fight to the death. Yuta stopped the 2 of them, saying, "The townspeople's attitude towards them is still somewhat worrisome, so really, let's listen to what they have to say first." The Lion King emerged from his mech, thanking for the chance to explain himself. He appreciated it. The others emerged from their battle robots as well. He began his story by saying that he was partly to blame for the uneasy situation in the city. 20 years ago, these lands were still the possessions of the country of Stuttgart. Despite the small area, the relationship between the royal family and the people was very trusting. It was a glorious country. But one day, the intrigues and cruel policies of the young, ambitious Duke Hommel changed everything. The young, beautiful queen became Meltoria's hostage. The king was killed, and the common people began to suffer from regularly increasing taxes. The captured queen was forced to reciprocate the feelings of Duke Karen, who was smitten by her beauty. As a result, they had 2 children. However, she died a few years ago. Arthur noted that Duke Karen is Mushim's father-in-law. The queen loved the people of Stuttgart dearly, and, even when bedridden with illness, asked herself, "What can I do for them?" Aluna came to the conclusion that he was quite strongly connected to her. The Lion King leaves guesses about this to their imagination, but overall it's a rather sad story. They simply wanted to protect their people, and they, in turn, sheltered and protected and, well, they heard him, and now they knew they were no ordinary highwaymen, but they still couldn't let their employer down. In that case, were the mercenaries still going to catch him? Aluna and Yuta were silent for a moment, and Aluna assumed so. Yuta gave the Lion King a categorical refusal. He confidently came up with a better solution. The Lion King winced. The mercenary informed Duke Homel that their gang had beheaded the Lion King. Homel asked in bewilderment, "And what do you mean by this? The unrivaled Knights of Steel?" Yuta, without blinking an eye, replied, "We do not spare our enemies, so we simply killed them all." They piled the fallen furs before Duke Homel. The furs were undoubtedly those of the raiders, and there were many of them. The Duke was worried and doubtful. "But are you sure it's time to celebrate the victory?" Yuta, hastily apologizing, went to report to his master. Jean realized that the main part of the plan had been successful. Jean approached the throne and addressed the Lion King by his real name, Theseus. The blonde tells his comrade that Sei was famous in this country. Tessie himself extends his hand, and introducing himself, says that he is glad to meet them. The guy says that it is mutual, and recalls the story that was his past. The blonde asks them not to forget about the deal, and Tessie says that if they let him go, he will give them the voice of Duke Charon in the fight for the throne. He also says that if they can organize a secret meeting with Udine, he will give them 200 million gold. The blonde says he will do anything for that amount, and the girl says that if they can get that voice, then Linne Carlo will definitely be happy. The boys arrive at the residence of Duke Charon, and Tessie bends over his mother's grave. He makes a promise to her grave to save the people of Shatgar, and asks her to wait a little. An adult man comes up behind them and tells Theseus that he has not been here for a very long time, and upon his arrival, immediately asks for a huge sum of money. Tessie introduces his father to the boys and addresses the Duke, saying that the boys were excellent riders. The father immediately wants to take them into his service, but Tessie asks not to take his friends away from him. The Duke asks the boy if what he wanted was the succession to the throne, and the boy says that it was, and tells him about the slight difficulty of the situation. The guys find themselves in the royal capital of the Meltaria kingdom, and the guy notices that everything went quickly. The princess asks the guys how it went, and they tell her about getting the Duke's voice. Yuta tells her that someone wants to meet Udine. The princess starts to wonder who it was. Tessie appears and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The girl looks at him in surprise and then, pulling herself together, asks Arthur to bring Udine. She asks if the rider's room would suit him, and he tells her that he trusts her choice. The girl asks the reason for the secret meeting, and Tessius explains the whole situation to her. Prince Udine greets the boy and asks him to sit down. Tessius sits down and says that he has a request for him. Udine notes that in his current situation, he will most likely not be able to help him. Tessius looked seriously at the guy and said that he was asking to do this not now, but when he became king. The prince asks affirmatively whether he was the son-in-law of Prince Musham, and Tessie confirms this and says that he is also the eldest son of Duke Charon. Tessius asks the prince to unify tax rates throughout the kingdom and issue a decree prohibiting persecution of people. The prince says he understands, but notes that doing so would undermine their authority. Tessius says he has no objection to this. He tells how he saw with his own eyes the terrible state of the inhabitants of the Duchy of Holomel. Tessius could not come to terms with such cruelty. Udine asks the reason why the boy decided to turn to him, because he could have asked his brother Muxim. Tessie explains that it is unlikely that Muxim would have accepted his request, because he was on good terms with the dukes. Tessie says that he and his father are ready to make sacrifices. He asks Crown Prince Udine to become their king and save the kingdom. Udine looks at Tessie in surprise. The princess comes to Nagisa and tells her about being sent to the kingdom of Emo. The girl is puzzled what kind of kingdom it was, since this name was not in the Union of Eastern Peoples. The princess tells her father that she will go there and form an alliance with them to oppose the Ruja Empire. Her father says that he will also go with them, but the girl refuses. The girl explains that her father and the king were constantly arguing like little children. The princess says that they, as beautiful, strong, and independent girls, will go and lay the foundation. A little later, they appear at the king's castle, and the doors are open for them, saying that the girls were already expected. The king meets the princess and says that a lot of time has passed since their meeting, and the last time he saw her was when she was little. Renelle tells him that her mother told her a lot about him. The king is surprised and then asks the girls to sit down to discuss everything. Nagisa watched the king and noticed his friendly face, and wondered why he didn't get along with Majni. The king says that 5 years have passed since Ruliha left them. The princess says that they came to them as ambassadors, and since they had bad relations with the Rugia Empire, She would like to discuss with the king the possibility of an alliance with them and with the union of the Eastern nations. The king's gaze changed abruptly, and he said that the union was unlikely for him. The girls were surprised by his answer. The king says he doesn't trust the alliance of nations, and the girl says incomprehensibly that it was supposed to be mutually beneficial to them. The king notes that this alliance forced 4 states to leave the country in a short time. The princess says that this may have been Rugia's strategy. The king doubted that in such a short time, Rugia could do such a thing. He says that most likely there were traitors in the alliance. The girl, hearing this, exclaims incredulously, and the king says that his answer will remain the same. He says that it didn't matter at all whether they were the enemies of his enemies. Nagisa notices how much the atmosphere around her has changed, and mentally says that she has seen the king's true serious face. She wonders where the king with the kind face went, and then accidentally says out loud that the king was in love with the princess's mother. The princess screamed, and the king looked at her sharply. The girl looked at them in fear. The king stands up and looks down at the girl. He asks her name, and the girl introduces herself. The king asks the reason why she decided so, and the girl says that his expression expressed kindness when talking about Rulich. The princess shouts at her to apologize, as she is disrespecting the king. But the girl continues to speak, and says that she knew that expression very well. Then, remembering Yuta, she mentally said that she had seen that expression a lot. She remembered how she hit him, and the guy turned around sharply and wanted to scold the girl, but his facial expression suddenly changed, and he began to smile and laugh. The reason for this was that the guy was looking at the girl he loved, and Nagisa understood this. There is a silence in the room, and then the king asks the reason why women can see right through men so easily. He starts to cry and admits that it was true. The princess looked at the king in surprise. The king, having come to his senses, asks to bring Majni to him to talk about the further union. The girl is perplexed, because only recently the king spoke about mistrust. But Emil explains to her that this concerned only the union of the Eastern nations. He says he must admit that he became sarcastic because it was the country of his love rival. However, he could not help but trust the country in which his beloved woman lived. Emo and Majni signed the contract without any problems, and they even made peace. Now, Amuria's safety was ensured, and for this, the princess thanked Nagisa. The girl embarrassedly says that she did nothing, when suddenly they hear strange sounds. The girls run in and see the men fighting. The girls looked at them in horror. The princess yells at them and asks them not to behave like children. The boys return home. Majni says that in any case, thanks to this, the Eastern Alliance and Amoria will now be safe. The princess says that according to the king, there was a traitor within the alliance. Majni wonders why anyone would betray them. Suddenly, they hear a crash. The boys are informed that there was a large landslide ahead, which was man-made. The boys are very surprised by this, and they are told that 20 mechs of enemies were discovered. The princess asks whose they are, and is told that it was unknown, since there were no identifying marks. The princess immediately calls out to Nagisa. The princess says that this will be her first battle, and the girl says that she couldn't. The princess asks Nagisa to pull herself together. The girl is informed that Lasbel's mech, Idante and Basim were ready, but unfortunately Nagisa's mech was undergoing major repairs and therefore could not be used. The guys congratulate the girl on her first fight and ask her not to overexert herself too much and to move at her own pace. The guy asks to show everyone the results of his training, and Nagisa smiles and says that she will do so. The girl appears in Lasbel's fur and announces that she is moving out. Nagisa goes outside and finds herself surrounded by enemies. She watched as everyone around her struggled. She watched as one mech laid down another and pierced him with his sword. The blonde shouts to Nagisa that one mech is heading towards her. The girl mentally says that she thought she was ready for such a fight. The girl's fur and the enemy's fur collide with each other. She recalls that in Aikido there was no limit to the number of techniques used. The teacher said that there were fundamental techniques, but they were then going to talk about what was beyond. Yuta then asked if the teacher's words meant that they had already mastered the Aikido technique. The teacher then told him that he was a little mistaken and said, for example, that if suddenly they were outnumbered, or the enemies had weapons, or even if they were in any other situation, then he broke off. And then he continued, saying that while the enemy looked like a man, their job was to crush and drop him. Then he suddenly appeared behind Ute, throwing him over his back. The teacher then said that if they observed the enemy's actions, They would be able to come up with ways to suppress him, and even movements they had not learned would come naturally to them. The girl, returning from her memories, repeated the teacher's words about crushing and breaking. She immediately destroys the first mech and reports it. Nagisa strikes again and tells herself not to get distracted and to calm her mind, just like she did during Zazen. She takes out her sword and looks at her enemies with a gleam in her eyes. She says that although it was not so well known, Aikido also used sword techniques. She remembers her father's words and says that she was confident in herself. She asks Jude how many he has beaten and tells him that she has beaten 3 already. Jude tells her that once he beats one guy, there will be 4. The girl continues to beat and win one after another and counts 7. One of the mechs is surprised, and she asks them why they are running away from her. The guy calls her and asks if everything is okay with her. The girl, having killed another one, says that she has destroyed the 10th mech. She stood surrounded by fallen mechs. The boys say the girl was gorgeous, and then notice something bluish-white surrounding Lasbella. The girl asks the guys if the mission was completed, but they look at each other and just give her a thumbs up, indicating that she did a good job. In the kingdom of Meltaria, the day of voting for the succession to the throne has arrived. In the Great Hall, the important people of the kingdom, who were nobles and representatives of the nobility, have gathered. Everyone is sitting at a huge round table, in the center of which lies a laurel wreath. The situation was tense, and everyone was watching what was happening carefully. Each of them was serious. The man says that Duke Karen has not arrived yet, but since the time has come, they were going to start voting. The man begins to explain the rules of voting. He says it was a very important and serious vote, and so he asked everyone to think carefully about their decision. The man says that they will start with the second prince, Bildero, and he stands up and says that they do not want a weak king, and so he will vote for Mushim. Then there was Princess Rudria, who voted for Yudin, saying that for the king who will bring peace to the kingdom. After her, there was Princess Lindela, who voted for Mushim. And then they called Princess Lene Carlo. The princess says that she will vote for Yudin because the kingdom should be ruled by someone who understands the feelings of others. So everyone voted in turn for Yudin and then for Mushim. Mushim had 3 votes and Yudin had 4. There were 2 votes left, and if all went well, Yudin would win. The next voter was Duke Solomel. He says that after much thought, he decided to vote for the one who will make the country rich. He looked at the guys and said that it was not Prince Yudin but Prince Mushim, and he voted for him. Mushim starts laughing and says, turning to Yudin and Lina Carlo, that he has won. The girl jumps up and asks everyone to wait, because Duke Karen has not voted yet. The boy says that he has already taken care of the Duke's vote, and since the Duke always kept his word, the prince made him promise to vote for him. The princess thought that the Duke really was like that, and wondered what the Duke's goal was. If Coron is announced. Mukoldurab per Majukesha Basinkera. The door opens, and the eyes of those sitting in the room widen at what they see. Instead of the Duke, his son Tessius enters the room. His gaze was serious, and he held a paper in his hands. Everyone looked at him, and Prince Mushim asked with displeasure what he was doing at this meeting. Tessius hands over the paper and says that it was a family inheritance that his father had already signed. He says that he was now the Duke of Coron. Mushim slams his fist on the table, jumps up, and calls Tessie bad names. The Duke says that he wants a world where everything is calm, where everyone is equal, and no one is pressured. Tessie says that as a king, Mushim certainly won't do that. The guy takes a tablet and puts his vote on Yudin. Mushimi shouts at him in a rage, calling him a bastard and saying that it was unforgivable. The princess turns to him and says that everything was fair and Yudin is now the king. Mushim furiously shouts that he could be the only king. The man tries to calm the prince down and asks him to accept this. Mushimi takes out a knife and cuts the man's throat, telling him not to dare give him orders. The princesses looked at this in shock. The prince tells the dead man that it was his incompetence that led to this. Yuta looked at him in shock. Mushim tells the princess how he could not prepare in case he lost. He says that the vote was invalid, and the prince's personal soldiers enter the room. Mushim orders them to kill Yudin. The princess grabs Yudin and is about to run. The blonde asks her to run away immediately, and the girl asks where they will run if he has taken control of the entire castle. The princess tells them that they can go down to the underground hangar, since most likely her Odin should have been there. Having descended into the hangar, The girl looked in shock at the fact that not only Odin was missing, but also all the other mechs. The prince also appears in the hangar and says that he foresaw their appearance in this place and therefore removed all the mechs from there. Suddenly, enemy mechs appear behind the guys, and Mushim says that they were like rats in a sack. The guy says with a malicious smile that he had asked her before not to be arrogant, even if her Rudia value was slightly higher than his. The guys are panicking and asking each other what to do, because there are more and more enemies. The princess says that they can only keep their distance, when suddenly Yudin turns around and calls the guys. He points to a very large fur coat and asks if it is a working fur coat. They tell him that it was a fur created by the hero Ruzek who founded this kingdom. This fur was called Viktolf, and he was their national treasure. The princess says that even she and her Rudy could not have him. Yuta says that means it was impossible, but the blonde asks him to get in. The guy reminds him that his gun number was only 2, and the guys, hearing this, simultaneously kick him and say that after all, it was impossible. The guy, holding on to the spot where the guys hit him, climbs into the mech and says that if he thinks about it, the situation was similar to his first use of Arlium. He notes that even the cockpit was like that and wonders if he can really move. He thinks that if it doesn't start, his friends will be caught and killed. Yuta starts to activate it and begs the mech to turn on. The fur's eyes lit up, and the boys looked at him happily. Mushim grabbed the railing furiously and shouted that it was impossible. But the fur raised his hand and looked at her and said that Viktolf had become active. The boy says in surprise that he can control it. It was good for him, but he didn't know what to do without a weapon. Yuta has 5 mechs. He clenches his fist and wonders if he can deal with them without a weapon. Suddenly, he moved very quickly, and the enemy mechs and Mushim were shocked by this. He very quickly finds himself near the enemy, and the guy, barely holding on inside, says that it was very fast. He hits one mech, and it breaks into small pieces and flies towards its comrades. Just one mech collides with 2 others, and together they continue to fly further. They crash right into the door, destroying it and fly on, destroying everything around. The mech Yuta was sitting in was surrounded by dust and smoke due to the impact. The guys looked at him in shock, and the blonde said that it was even more than he expected. Mushim says that these mechs were the pride of the Meltari Highlander fleet. He says that with just one blow, 3 were defeated. The princess says that it was natural, since Viktolf was in front of them. She says that in order for it to activate, the Rudia value must start from 200,000, and therefore it has no equal among other mechs. The guy, in shock, says that this was talking about Yuta's weapon, and the girl confirms this, because she allowed him to win, and his weapon value was not subject to modern calculations. Yuta falls in the mech's cockpit and, trying to get up, says that he couldn't even imagine that this mech would be much more sensitive than the others. Suddenly, an enemy mech stands above him and strikes him with an axe. However, his axe breaks off and flies towards Prince Mushib. The prince is surprised, and a soldier runs up to him and asks him to leave here, since it was not safe here. The blonde tells Yuta that Arthur was already on the transporter and suggests that he get out of there. The boys stop abruptly and see that the prince has prepared an ambush for them. Yuta asks everyone to wait a bit and says he will clear the way for them. The princess tells him that there was a lift attached to the rails, and the guy, seeing it, lifts it above himself. He swings the lift, shouts for everyone to get out of his way, and throws it at the enemies. A huge column of dust rose up, and enemy mechs flew in all directions. Yuta says that he cleared the way for them, and the blonde says in his mind that he did it harshly. He says that he is worried about the carrier and offers to go. The guys, upon going outside, find themselves surrounded by even more enemy mechs. Amina shouts that they were suddenly attacked and asks what happened here. Nanami says that she will protect everyone until they return. Yuta tells the others that he sees the boys, and reports that they were okay. But as soon as Nanami got close to Yuta, she struck him, mistaking him for an enemy. Yuta asks her to stop. Yuta was very pleased that the girl could perform such attacks, but he also couldn't stop her. The girl shoots arrows at him and says that he is caught. However, the guy's fur stood as if nothing had happened. The princess is shocked to see that there was no effect, and the blonde man leaning out of the window tells Nanami that it was Yuta and asks her to stop attacking. Nanami asks in surprise what kind of fur it was, and the guy tells her that he will tell her later, since they needed to get to the carrier. Jean asks Lisa, and she says with displeasure that he must have a good reason to distract her. Jean asks her to be ready, and as soon as the guys return, they were supposed to start. Yuta's eyes widen, and Nanami turns to him and says that it was all very amazing. The guys stood there thinking, and Yuta thought that they definitely couldn't handle such a number of enemies. He asks everyone to get into the carrier and leave first, and he will cover them for now. There were a lot of enemy mechs, and the guys started to talk him out of it. Yuta says that he will only distract them until they lose sight of the carrier. Nanami turned to them. She confidently says that she will also stay with him. Yuta is surprised and asks her not to do it. The girl says that if he is left alone, he will behave recklessly again. The guy tries to dissuade her again, and she asks him if he considers her incapable of fighting. The guy immediately apologizes and says that he will be glad to accept her help. Jean asks if they are done talking and asks the others to get on board. The boys tell them to be careful and tell Yuta to protect Nanami. Nanami also asks them to be careful and says that they will meet at the residence of Duke Charon. Yuta suggests that the girl deal with the enemies. The carrier starts up and begins to move away. The enemy mech informs the others that the carrier has started to take off and orders them to be captured. Suddenly, Yuta does something, and the enemy mech immediately flies away. No one understands what happened, and then Yuta realized how he did it, and he asked Nanami to use the enemy's steam vent so that they wouldn't see anything. Nanami asks smilingly that it turns out they need to cut them into pieces. The guy hesitantly confirms her words. Suddenly, Yuta runs towards one of the enemies, and they stand there in surprise. He strikes and the fur breaks. A huge column of steam comes out of this fur, which is like a wall blocking the entire view of enemies. The boy thinks that if they don't distract them well, the enemies will continue chasing the carrier. Yuta turns up the volume and tells Nanami to run downwind. They ran in different directions, and Yuta thought about how he hadn't been alone with Nanami for a long time, and now they would have to be on different sides again. He mentally asks the guys to be careful and wait for them at the Duke's residence. The girls watch the explosions from the carrier, and the princess asks Aluna if everything is okay with the guys. The girl tells her that they should not worry, since Yuta was there. The princess watched the girls' movements closely, and noticed how she was actually worried about the boys too. The boys arrive at the Duke's residence, and the Duke himself, upon meeting them, says that he could not even imagine how far Mushib would go. He asks if everything is okay with them. The princess assures them that everything was fine, but she says that his son was taken prisoner. The Duke's face changes abruptly. The boys start making excuses, apologizing, and saying that they wanted to help him. The Duke asks them to calm down, since even Mushib had no right to kill the Duke just like that. Suddenly, a soldier interrupts them. He reports a large-scale invasion of Melteria mechs, numbering 500. The Duke angrily says that he has gone too far, and orders his entire army to be gathered to teach him a lesson, despite the fact that he was his son-in-law. The princess says that she will help them, and Jean asks what she means, since her words were a bit frivolous, because they cost about 500 furs. Jean asks her not to forget to prepare a solid bonus for this, and says that he will be in front with Emina, and the girl guesses that Falma will be behind. The guy says that it would be bad, and says that Lorgo will be on defense. They are about to contact Vajra, when suddenly the princess interrupts their conversation, and asks what happened about her. Aluna asks her not to say that she is also going to participate in the battle, but the princess tells her not to underestimate her. In the middle of the forest, explosions from the battle were still visible. Having taken down the last enemy mech, Yuta sighs heavily. He asks the girl if these were all pursuers. They climb down from their furs, and Yuta asks Nanami if she's okay, and she says she's okay somehow. However, she shows the guy a broken communicator, and says that during the battle it fell and broke, and now they will not be able to contact the guys. Yuta says that they must go anyway. Arriving at the Duke's residence, they look at the battle site in shock. Nanami says that they were apparently attacked and asks where everyone disappeared to. Yuta mentally says that Aluna and Emina were not so easy to defeat, and tells the girl that he is sure that they are safe and sound. The girl says it was very strange that there was no video of a single mech from such a big battle. The guy says she is right and suggests going to the city center. The guys go into a cafe and order a steak. The girl looks at it with appetite, and the guy looks around and listens. Suddenly he hears how at the next table they were talking about how, in the battle, the prince used the royal guard. His interlocutor says in surprise that the Duke was his father-in-law, and the man says that this is why everyone pretended that nothing had happened, and that is why he hired people to remove all the furs. Yuta starts picking at his plate, pretending to eat. The interlocutor asks who won, and the man says that the royal army won, as it outnumbered them. As it turned out, the Duke was alive and fled to Duke Liedemalt's side. They discussed the situation in the country. One of them said that all the principalities were now under the control of the prince. Yuta realized that this was all he needed to know. He pretended to just ask a toothpick to avoid suspicion. Yuta says everything is fine, realizing they don't have toothpicks. The man says something strange is going on, since the Duke's army was barely damaged. It seems suspicious, since they shouldn't have had a chance against the royal army. Too good to be true. They say the frontline mechs were very strong, but they still left one mech as a cover. It turns out that this mech was fighting off the enemy alone, and when his comrades left, he simply disappeared. Yuta wondered how this could be, and realized that it was most likely Amina. He stands up and tells Nanami that they are leaving. He smiles and tells her that everyone was alive. The boys were all standing there, alive and well, and Jean says that they were able to easily join Duke Liedemalt. The princess says that Duke Borelma is located further away, and with him they will be able to launch a counterattack. Jean notes that there were still few of them, and the girl remembers one general. However, the girl needed to meet him in person, and she decides to sneak up on him with Amina. The guys are surprised by her choice. A little later, the three were sitting in the cabin, preparing to set off. Arthur was sitting folded on the ceiling, and the princess was sitting in front of Amina. Amina was unhappy that there were three of them in the mech's cabin, and the princess said that she was very petite, and Arthur could be folded neatly. The princess gives the command to move forward, but the girl still resists. They start arguing with Arthur and start moving forward. The girl continues to grumble discontentedly, and the princess calmly answers her. Yuta and Nanami continue on their way and come across several mechs who were about to engage in battle with each other. The guy turns to Nanami and says that one of the parties was their friend, and the girl asks him how she can tell them apart. The guy comes out of his hiding place and approaches the furs and says that he is a group of mercenaries led by Princess Linne Carlo, and they have arrived to support them. The mechs looked at them strangely at first, and then the silver mech began to thank Yuta and say that he had heard about them. The other mech, who was dark gray on the contrary, began to call them ignorant and began to give orders to seize the boys. Yuta immediately strikes the enemy and thanks him for the explanation. Nanami joined the guy and also thanked them for the explanation. The man, emerging from his fur, begins to thank the guys, and Yuta, modestly, says that it was all thanks to them. They salute and say that they are the royal guard under the command of Princess Rudria. Yuta clarifies that this princess was Linne's sister, and the guard confirms this by saying that, unfortunately, she, like the others, was captured. The man says that while they were heading towards Duke Liedemalt's army, who were in the same situation as them and were about to ask them for help in freeing the princess and their duke, the royal guard intercepted and attacked them. Yuta says that he was also going to the duke and suggests that they go together. The man says that he did not expect such an offer, but will gladly agree. He says that on the way there will be their fort, and they could stop there and replenish their numbers. Princess Linne introduces herself to the soldiers and says that she wants to meet General Orlea. She points to one of the soldiers and asks him to call the general. He leaves, and the girl turns to Amina and asks her to be on guard. Amina mentally says that if everything does not go as they expected, she will run away with her tail between her legs, but out loud the girl says that she will do everything to protect them. The princess is called out. The general looks at the princess in surprise and says that he thought his soldiers were making fun of him when they said she had come to see him. The girl says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The general falls to the ground and begins to beat her, saying that they really haven't seen each other for a long time, and that it took him days and weeks to see her. He says that he missed her very much, and she responds by saying that it was because of his behavior that she avoided him. The general asks the reason why she came to him. The princess asks him to lend his army to her, and Prince Yudin to stop Musham. The general says that it turns out that she wanted him to betray Commander Cruz, to take her side, and the girl says that if he refuses, she will erase him from her life. The man immediately begins to beg her not to do this, otherwise he will not stand it. He gets down on one knee in front of her and says that he will dedicate this life to her and will do everything possible for her. The princess says that it will be enough for her that he does everything she asks. The soldiers watch them and discussed something. The princess, while in the general's office, says that she knew that Mushim would not have the courage to destroy Odin. She says that this is probably because Odin was a national treasure, like Victolf. She notes that all the mechs were heading to Mardan base. The princess thought that this base was a small base, and most likely they decided to make it a transit point. She turns to the general and says that if they need to attack, then they need to do it now. Orlia turns and leaves to carry out the order. Suddenly he stops and asks the girl if she has someone who fills her heart. The girl says that she has never had anything like this, and the general replies that he is glad to hear it. He turns around and walks away, but the expression on his face was very angry. Arthur comes to Emine and tells her that the general has agreed to cooperate, and now the girl can relax. The girl thinks that she can't let her guard down anyway, because they used to be their enemies. The princess comes in and asks Arthur to stop. Arthur says that the girl will not be able to rest enough, but suddenly a large man appears behind him and swings his bat over the guy's head. The man strikes from behind, and Arthur flies down with his arms outstretched. The guy screams in pain, and the girls cry out in shock. The general appears behind the princess and grabs her, holding a knife to her throat. The girl asks what this all means. He says that she really thought that he would be hers for the rest of his life. He says that unlike her, Commander Cruz accepted him immediately. The princess realized that Cruz had foreseen everything. The general turns to Emine and tells her to get out of the fur. Otherwise, he promises to make the princess a head shorter. The girl gets off the fur, and all the tied-up people head to the carrier. The princess asks where he is taking them, and the man says that he is taking them to the Mardan base. He says that in a normal situation, where there is no firepower, there could not have been a better place for bait. He says he is sure the rebels will fall for her, not suspecting that there were 1,000 furs prepared. The princess looks at the general in horror. A soldier comes to the boys and tells them that Princess Rudria has been delivered to the Mardan base. The man says that this changes everything greatly. He tells Yuta that it was a supply base and there would probably only be 100 mechs there, and they would probably use it as a transit route. The guy says that this was their chance to strike, and the man starts praising him. Yuta gets embarrassed. The guys come to the Mardan base and watch it from their cover. Jean says that there is no movement, and the man answers him that it means there are no problems, and Yuta finds it strange. He explains to them the reason why he thinks so, and the man sadly says that it turns out it was a trap. The guy mentally asks them not to make such faces, as it becomes difficult for him to tell them not to go there. Yuta says that he will just go there alone, because if they all go there, it will be bad if they get caught. But if he goes there alone, he is sure that he can handle it. The man didn't want to let the boy go, and Yuta climbed into the fur and said that he would be quick. However, the man felt as if he was a boy going on a mission. Yuta stands in front of the base and sees absolute silence. He thinks that he was mistaken, thinking that it was a trap. But suddenly, a lot of mechs appear from the cover. A whole army, consisting of 1,000 mechs, surrounded the guy. The man says from his hiding place that he knew it was all a trap, and Yuta says there are so many of them that he can't even count them. Nanami clasps her hands in excitement, and Yuta mentally says that if he gets caught, then he will have no more way out, and now he needs to break through by any means necessary. He turns to his fur and tells him to do it together. From behind the barred window, sunlight breaks through. Arthur comes to his senses and asks where they are. The girl answers him, and he immediately asks about the princess. The girl notices that he only had the princess in his head and says that she is most likely being held in another room. The guy angrily curses the man. Emine notices the guy fidgeting and says the handcuffs were really in the way. Arthur confirms this. She asks for help to get something out of her upper lip, and Arthur, in fear, asks what is wrong with her face and says that it was disgusting to look at her. The guy takes something out of her mouth and asks what it is. The girl asks him to just pick at the handcuffs and explains that she couldn't do it herself. The guy asks what was the point of taking this thing then, and the girl answers him by saying that she herself doesn't know, and took it thinking that it would come in handy. The princess is brought into a separate office and asks the reason. The general says that there is a beautiful view from this office. He says that it was all so that she would watch as 1,000 mechs would sit in anticipation, and her army would come to rescue the princess without even knowing it. The girl interrupts him and says that it was tasteless, and now she understood why no one liked the guy. He turns around abruptly and says she was wrong, and she doesn't want to admit that she was wrong not to choose him. The girl says that she is never wrong. She says he was never attractive to her, and now she knows why. The general says Cruz tells him otherwise, and the princess replies that it was his problem to take everything seriously. The man puts his hands on the girl's shoulders and asks if she is aware of her situation. He says that Cruz gave him permission to do whatever he wanted with the girl, and the girl, mentally frightened, but boldly tells him that he will not be able to do this with her. The man freezes at her words, then grabs her outer garment. He says he'll see how long this bravado lasts. Linne bites her lower lips and mentally says that she can't believe how helpless she is without her fur. She thinks that she can't show her weakness to him anyway. The man rips off the girl's shirt, leaving her in her underwear. He smiled nastily and asked what had happened to her, because before that she had been talking non-stop. But now she had gone silent. The girl clenched her hands, and her nails dug into her palms so hard that they started bleeding, and she also bit her lips until they bled. He asks her to stop all this, because now she was just a woman. Suddenly, they are interrupted, and a voice is heard from the receiver, announcing the approach of one mech, with whom they are going to engage in combat. The general says with disappointment that this is the most inopportune moment. He asks again about just one fur. He runs up to the receiver and yells at the soldier, saying that he is a fool for exposing everyone because of one fur. The soldier starts making excuses, and suddenly the girl calls out to the general. She goes to the window and says that she lied to him about something. Yuta was fighting the enemies outside, and was thinking that he hadn't had time to hold everyone back, and that he would most likely have to enter weapon focus mode. The general asks in bewilderment what she said, and asks what she lied about. The girl, with tears in her eyes, tells him that right now, there is someone she loves the most in her life. The man, in shock, asks who he is and demands that she speak. Suddenly, the lock on the door breaks and Arthur runs in, opening the door, asking if the princess is okay. The girl screamed, and Arthur looked sharply at the general's hand holding the girl, and the tears in her eyes. The guy looked at him angrily. The general calmly looks at Arthur and mockingly says that the very same one excluded from the Reichmer family has appeared before them. The general asks what Arthur is doing here, since he is already late, since his princess is already crying. A knife appears in Orlia's hands. Arthur can't stand it and rushes off, trying to attack this man. The general continues to mock Arthur, and mockingly asks him if he is so stupid that he rushed to such a cheap provocation and prepares a knife. The knife goes straight through the guy's hand. However, another guy's fist hits the general in the face, and he knocks the general down, beats him, and then pulls out a knife. The guy brings his bloody fist to the general's face and asks him for permission to fix it. He says that he serves directly under Linne Carlo as her squire. The clanking of iron is heard outside. Something is happening to Yuta's fur, and he is trying to get deeper to his weapon. The mech is getting back to normal, and the guy says that he needs to stay like that now. Suddenly, he hears someone say that the weapon's concentration mode has been activated, and reports that a scan is being launched to determine the situation. Yuta asks who she is, and he is told that she was Victolf's artificial intelligence, named Fili Rudia. The guy was shocked by this. Fili reports that the scan is complete, and asks the boy to leave the area for safety. Yuta says that they are completely surrounded and asks how they can do that. The AI says that no enemies were detected in the sky, and the guy asks if she is offering to fly away. She replies that the mech can do that, and can also move faster for a short time. Yuta mentally says that it shouldn't have been weird, there were other flying mechs. He says that in that case they should take off. Victolf really does take off. The guy screams, not fully believing that he is flying. The princess says contentedly that the situation has changed a lot, and asks if he has already begun to be afraid. The general, all beaten up, asks her to tell him who the one she loved was. She says it was the pilot who got in here alone, and the man they thought they had tricked. The general first looks at her in surprise, and then begins to laugh out loud. He says that the guy is now trapped, and if the girl unties him, he promises to give the order to cancel his destruction. However, the girl stood motionless, and seeing this, the smile on the man's face disappeared. He asks her why she doesn't do anything, since he was surrounded by 1,000 furs and was now going to die a painful death. The general, seeing her look, asks if she knew about everything, and the girl says that she knew nothing and asks him to look out the window. From the window, you could see the guy's fur flying into the air, away from the dangerous point. Yuta tells Fili that they managed to fly away from the enemies, and Fili tells him that she counted 988 enemies and challenges him to destroy them all at once. The guy asks again in surprise, and Fili tells him that she hasn't had the opportunity to check the enemy shields yet, but in any case, she was almost completely sure that all targets would be destroyed. The guy says he understands her and asks her to do it, She says permission has been granted and will now switch the system to Nova mode. Changes begin to occur with the fur. The guy is surprised, and he is informed that the activation systems have begun charging. Yuta says in surprise that they have transformed, and Philae says that the core has been nourished and now she will chant spells. She begins to add an earthquake spell, then a water sphere. Pentagram appears in the sky, and Philae continues to add a few more spells. Then he says that he is making adjustments to the changes in the target's position. And then, saying that everything is complete, he says that he is starting the launch. Suddenly, a large funnel appears in the sky and begins to suck everyone in. A whole army of mechs begins to be destroyed and fly into this funnel. Then the walls of the building begin to collapse and fly into the crater. Various parts of the mechs, even the flags, were all destroyed. And at the end, there was a big explosion. Philae tells the guy that the destruction of the enemies is complete. And the guy mentally says that everything really happened in a minute. Philae says that she switches back to normal mode. After returning the mech to its original form, Philae reports that all enemy mechs have stopped functioning,